just barely catches it. Now Limon is going to try and overtake on Fonseca. Fonseca gives that one up, almost a little too wide there for Limon. Holds tough and sending it deep around the banking, and Shell Oil, he's going to take the spot back. Fonseca, that was a brilliant move. This is full drift here from the Japanese driver. Watch this. Unreal. That car should not be still going. That is just seat of your pants stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just kind of landed a little bit wrong for him, but fortunately, at least pointed in the right direction. This was crazy, though.
And hasn't been shaken, but man, they see close to that wall.
Look at the oversteer. He looks to the inside. Michael tried to cover off. He's going to squeeze him down a little bit. Tries to open up the corner. Cut back and see if he can get the launch, and it's much quicker off. Oh, but he covers him down to the inside.
Oh my goodness, covers him down to the inside. I think there may have been a little bit of contact there, but Michael Johnson going to get the benefit of the draft here. You can see him closing down on the back of the 79. And there's the late move from Michael going down to the inside, trying to get into the braking zone.
The red mist is up for these two, and down into the braking. Can Johnson get it done? Yes, he does. Don't count out Travis. Tries to cut back. Goes the long way around. Nothing doing. No, he holds tight. He could try and get it in there. No, now he starts to fall back.
Starts to fall back. Going to try to send it a little bit on the outside of 15. Sometimes you can get a crossover there, but not going to work. He's going to have a wider line now into Turkey to try to carry a little bit more speed, but he's not going to find an easy way to try to get on by. And indeed, Michael Johnson just slides that car off the apex a little bit to prevent off any attack.
This is your chance to get behind the wheel. The opportunity to race just like the pros. From the grassroots levels, where we all got our start, to the most popular race cars on the planet. From the fairgrounds of Nashville to the high banks of Daytona, to tracks that will never be forgotten. Realistic driving, intense competition, all from the comfort of your own home. This is the ultimate motorsports simulation. This is iRacing.
It's the single biggest sporting event in the world. For more than 100 years, motorsports enthusiasts have witnessed the evolution of speed and power, where legends are born, where the incredible becomes the immortalized. It's all at a track with the ability to draw people from across the globe into a single 560-acre property, where generation after generation of families go through the turnstiles time and time again, where 400,000 strong all unite as one, all to enjoy the greatest spectacle in racing. This is the Major Series Indianapolis 500-mile race, live on the Global SimRacing channel. Hello everyone, and welcome to the 6th race of the European region's Pro Split campaign from iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. My name's Justin Prince. Alongside the booth today is Jake Sperry and Christian Challoner. Behind the scenes is our director, Zach Johnson, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Today takes us to the place where tradition never stops, IMS. Let's learn more about this prestigious racetrack and all of its history and glory with our GSRC track guide.
Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see our guide around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The first motorsports competition at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway took place in 1909. The track's original surface of crushed stone and tar proved problematic. The owners paved the track with more than 3 million bricks, giving rise to the nickname the Brickyard. Indy isn't known for its banking, with only 9 degrees of banking in all 4 corners. Indy is unique because those 4 corners are individual corners. Each is separated by a short chute. Turn 1, you find yourself battling tunnel vision with the grandstands and pit road on both sides of the track, closing in as you're trying to hit your mark. Turn 2 and down the backstretch, the drivers are often facing wind. Turns 3 and 4, also known as the north end of the speedway, flow exactly like turns 1 and 2. Surviving 2 world wars, 10 popes, and older than sliced bread, Indianapolis Motor Speedway is the most historic racing venue in America. Stepping onto the hallowed grounds of Indy, you feel over the 100 years of history. Winning at Indy requires all of the luck, skill, drive, and determination that you have. Many have come to taste the milk and have left empty-handed. The yard of bricks at the start-finish line pays tribute to the original surface. Kissing the bricks at Indianapolis Motor Speedway after your victory has quickly become an Indy tradition. With that being said, that's just scratching the surface of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And when you think about it, all these drivers are just chasing a glass of milk over 3 feet of bricks. It's amazing how those simple things mean so much to so many people. This has been our guide to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Strap on in and enjoy the show.
That was a look at our GSRC track guide for the Brickyard. Now, Jake, today brings us to one of the major staples for the Major Series, the Major Series Indy 500. What should we expect when it comes to this facility and this track with how challenging it can be for these drivers here today?
Now, for people who are brand new and have never understood what the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is all about, oh, it's only a 2.5 mile, 4 kilometer, 4-turn circuit with a track that looks pretty much like a brick. It is so much more difficult than that. The turns are 9.2 degrees of banking, but every single run from the short chute out of 1 into 2, the short chute out of 3 into 4, every corner's got a uniqueness to it and a difficultness to it. This is not going to be plain sailing. You multiply being perfect on a run at speeds over 225 kilometers an hour, or even top of that, over 325 kilometers an hour, I should say. You multiply that by 200, you realize that you're in for a really, really tough race with 5+ pit stops, strategy up and down the order. This truly is one of the great races.
It's a track and a racing facility that brings plenty of legends to the forefront, but also takes plenty of planning to sort out to be able to perform by the end of the night and by the end of this prestigious and prestigious and grueling 500 miles. Let's take a look at the standings for the drivers, looking to immortalize themselves amongst that top 10 in the points, but also looking to elevate themselves for the overall title run. Sean Campbell enters today with 130 points, his advantage over the defending champion, Dallas Pataska. Chris Barrett, David Manorwich amongst the top 4, Jamie Conway in 5th, then Ross Banfield, having to make up a lot of points after the Daytona 500 chaos earlier this year, is tied with Ryan Walker 13 back. Gabriel Roos, David Baker, Thomas Cope round out the standings for the pro driver standings. Then you include the sportsman side of the card. Those drivers are currently also amongst those looking to compete in a bump day to sort out who's in Sport 1 for the Euro side today. And boy, oh boy, is that fight for the championship tight. 2 teammates, Brian Boomstra currently has the boom over Baden at the moment by 1 point. Then Alexander Olsen, Daniel Bloomquist, along with Edward Shelley in the top 5. The separation 1st to 10th, 208 points. Sam Shallow looks to find a way to go from the shallow end of the points to the top end of those by the end of the season. Plenty of else to discuss when it comes to the Legends, because an additional driver ran in the Legends category this past round in Roberto De Phillips. That's put him in turn 731 points back to the current leader, David H. Baker, who is the only driver who's been able to make all the starts so far in 2022. Redford, Mario Schroeder, along with Thomas Geisler, have also made starts in 2022. Bring things over to the Legend Sports side of the card, where Jan Brony continues to look strong in a battle with Frank Esports competitor Ken Charant. 3 points to separation amongst those, Gary Thomas, Andy Banfield, Mikkel Hegstrom, the top 5 entering today. The European side of the card, 461 is the point separation for today's action. With that, let's take a look at the teams, because teams will be prevalent today, Christian, especially at a track such as this where teamwork is important. And for some of the teams, they've looked very unified to be able to lead the pro team standings as well as the sports side.
Yeah, absolutely. Apex Tech Racing Pro, no surprises, still leading the points championship. But Satellite Racing actually quite close, only 117 points back. Grizzly TFR Le Mans, 407 points back, so almost 4 times the distance there. HW Racing have kind of now slotted themselves in between the two Grizzly teams. They're in 4th spot, 486 back. Grizzly TFR Daytona, we're used to seeing them a little bit higher, but they're 930 points back. Don't think they're going to be contending for a championship this season. And then 6th through 10th is teams that are kind of a little bit down on driver power. Team Mad, you see there, 1,672 points back, and then all the way down to 10th, which is Leo Racing Team, 2,544 points off the lead, as they only have about a 10th of the number of points as Apex Tech Racing Pro. And we'll also take a look over at the sport team standings, which is NRG Racing ES. No surprises there. They're leading by 89 points over Bright Esports. Black Tree Race Crew are 1,054 points back, so a huge gulf back to that 3rd spot, with Hanson Brothers Racing in 4th, and Grizzly TFR Spa, they're in 5th, with Udox Daisy all the way at the tail end of the sport team standings with 994 points.
That's a look top to bottom at the point standings entering today. Let's take a look at the event details today, where Jake, these drivers get ready to run the full 500 miles, 200 laps at the Brickyard.
Yeah, and these are 200 very important laps around this circuit, which means that you're looking at anywhere between 27 to 32 laps in terms of a stint as you go around. So you multiply that maths out. If things stay green, you're looking at 6 stops somewhere around this track here today. Now, 26 instant points on a limit. Don't expect that to come up very often in this race. Most of the time, if you're getting yourself an instant point around this circuit, it's a big one out there, and the race is going to be very difficult from there on out. The good news for drivers is they'll have 1 spare car to work with. That means that they do have a chance, if they get caught up in something early, to get back into this race. And normally what we've seen from these sorts of races is that probably gets most, if not all, drivers at least 60 laps through this one.
A lot to discuss when it comes to the potential of today. With all those factored in, let's take a look at the weather conditions. Christian, we were discussing a lot of the weather and the potential of how that can impact the difficulty to make moves as well as the strategies today. What do these air and track temperatures as well as that cloud cover tell us for today?
Well, the first thing off is obviously 80 Fahrenheit air temp is a little bit on the hot side, not too hot though, but the track temp is the real thing I'm focused on. So 102 Fahrenheit, 39 degrees Celsius. That should actually make it pretty good for passing at the start of the race. But we are only coming up to noon in sim time in about 4 minutes time. So I expect the track's going to get hotter, and I think that's going to make it harder to pass. But the other thing is the wind, and the wind direction southwest right now, 11 miles an hour. That's going to be a key factor if that swings around, because that's going to kind of overpower one straightaway and depower another, especially if, you know, it swings around and gives you a huge draft down, say, the front stretch, but also then, you know, the opposite effect on the back stretch. So that's probably going to be what determines which kind of straightaway we see the most passing on.
With so much to factor in, these competitors currently completing their final warm-up laps. And as you see on the board, Alexander Kursanov, the quickest in the session in terms of lap times. But it's worth noting, one particular team looked quick in qualifying through the week. That being some of the Grizzly TFR machines. Manerwich second on the board in practice, currently the quickest, in fact, in the pre-qualifying, Jake. That team looks strong entering today. The top 4 on average speed in qualifying were from the Grizzly TFR camps.
And this is one of the things that I love about racing like this, is that you get yourself into qualifying. A qualifying set is not the same as a race set, and that is why you will see drivers put hours upon hours in to get themselves up at the top. You talk about the iRacing Indy 500, the ones where drivers can use their own setups and not the fixed one that's gone on this week. I look at someone like Rick Music as an example, who always puts his car up near the front of the field, but struggles a little bit more when it comes to race pace. It's going to feel very similar here. Some drivers will be good at getting their pace up. A real-world comparison will be Ed Carpenter, but who will struggle and fall back through the race because their race set is not as strong.
The drivers completing the final moments of warm-up. But one of the major traditions when it comes to Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the month of May is back home again in Indiana. for a special performance of Back Home Again in Indiana, let's turn things over to DJ Clark.
Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still burning bright through the sycamores for me. The new moon hay sends out its fragrance through the fields I used to roam. When I dream about the moonlight on the Wabash, how I long for my Indiana home.
DJ Clark once again with a special performance of Back Home Again in Indiana. He is from Zionsville, Indiana. But as the drivers make their way to the grid, it's time to look at how they did in pre-qualifying to sort out their positions for the European Pro Split for this year's running of the Majors Indy 500. David Manerwich had the quickest average speed of a 2:28.305 mile/hour qualifying run over 4 laps. He'll start alongside the teammate from the Daytona side of the Grizzly TFR camp, Cordell Colon. Trevor Bobrovsky and Travis Henderson round out the top 4. Separation amongst those 0.2 of a mile/hour. Ryan Wachaleski for Satellite Racing starts 5th in the first of the independents, and Shane Burke starts in 6th. Dawson Brock makes a return to the series in 7th alongside Joshua Wolf. Miguel Freitas looks to haul his way up through the pack from 9th, while Chris Barrett rounds out the top 10. He was amongst the 2:27 mile/hour bracket, Jake.
He certainly was. Ryan Walker will go from 11th position. He'll have David H. Baker alongside on row 6. Row 7 has Gabriel Roos and Alberto Gomez there in 14th. Tom Dreiling and Ross Banfield, they'll be on row number 8. Elvis Bonello will have Dallas Pataska. A lot of work to do from 18th, but not always the end of the world. Kamar Hashemi goes from 19th, along with Marcus Hagman in 20th.
21st is Alexander Kuzmanov. He was actually very, very fast in practice, but starting way back in the field. We'll have to see if he can move up through. Jan Drix back there in 22nd. Jamie Conway, I think, is the big name who's the furthest back in the field here, 23rd. Amando Ganalina in 34th, sorry. Mario Scherer and Sean Campbell, another driver, started towards the very tail end of the field. Currently the points leader. We'll have to see if he can move forwards, with Tuller rounding out the field.
That's a look top to bottom at this year's running order for the European Pro Split for Majors Indy 500. 200 laps, 500 miles on the docket. Jake, your keys to win this race today.
Buy yourself a ticket to the end. If you cannot get yourself to the end of this race, you have no chance of winning. The one thing you need to do is stay out of trouble inside of the opening 50 laps, work the strategy through 100 to 150, and then in those final 50 laps, that's when you can start being aggressive, making the moves, getting yourself up to the front. It's going to feel like a long race. 27 cars today. They're going to have to work really hard for it.
One driver with bad news already before we even begin. Ryan Walker missed the starting procedures. The 11th place qualifier will have to start from the pit lane and may potentially be half a track back by the time the 97 rolls its way off the pit lane. But the stage is set for the greatest spectacle in racing. 27 entries for the 2022 edition of the Majors Indy 500 for the European Pro Split. Pace car is off. Manerwich in control of the field. The field is green. We're underway from Indy. Manerlich off to a strong start. He leads lap 1 of 200. As the rest of the field settles themselves down, 27 cars on circuit, 26 in the main pack to begin the day.
And all of these drivers know here at this point in time, Justin, that these opening laps are crucial for setting a feel and a tempo to this race. If it gets very dicey very quickly, we know we've got drivers who want to go out there and make some moves. If they're happy to sit back and wait and be patient, then we know we're going to be in for a race that maybe is going to be a little bit more strategic. Keep an eye out, especially on car 25, Shane Burke. I saw him racing in an Indianapolis 100 race a few weeks ago with a group called Crest Autosport, and he managed to pick up a very big victory in that event. Has himself a cutout of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway now on his wall. He'll be definitely charging forward, looking for the result today.
Should be a very interesting storyline amongst that independent group in terms of the entrants. Someone based out of Ireland, in fact, the owner of SimTech Motorsport you're referring to, who has experience when it comes to karting action and plenty on the sim. Looking at the back groupings, Gabriel Roux amongst those fighting towards the back. In fact, he's pulling off the track. Something has happened to Gabriel Roux, where he's had to go to the short chutes.
Yeah, Christian, I believe you had a little look at it. He grabbed the wall coming out of one.
Yeah, very easy to do, and it nearly happened as well for Sean Campbell. He was trying to make a pass, and he nearly ended up in the fence. So it's just one of those things where you've got to kind of predict the aero push when you're following another car, and early in the race, when you just don't have that much kind of experience, you know, with the track conditions and whatnot, it's very, very hard to get it right on the first attempt. And unfortunately for Gabriel Roux, he does get it wrong initially. Quite a few cars have gotten very, very close to the outside wall, though. And it seems predominantly in that 1 and 2 end of the track. I haven't seen it too much at the 3 and 4 end so far.
And the interesting thing when it comes to Gabriel Roux, that's a mandatory damage repair. If you hit the wall like he did, 8 seconds, you have to come down and fix the race car. There is the fast repair available if necessary today, but that could be a major danger spot for some. Wolf holding on in front of Freitas meanwhile, as drivers continue to battle the aero wash, which will be a major factor, Christian, as well throughout the day, especially with that aero wash making it very tight to run wheel to wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. And the hardest part with the aero wash is that there's kind of a couple of points throughout the, you know, the separation distance where you'll have a positive benefit, especially when you're kind of about 1.5 seconds-ish back. It'll really pull you up. But then you kind of get to this sort of bubble that's kind of from about 0.5 out to that 1.2 area where you just have to keep chipping away at it very, very slowly if you want to make a pass. And the key is to just not get greedy. It's to kind of take like a 1/10 a lap or maybe even less than that and just slowly bring yourself into range. Once you get to about 0.5 of a second back, the pass is kind of really on at that stage. It's just so difficult to get to that point, and it's all about kind of offsetting your line. You'll see a lot of drivers will go you know, to the top side, but obviously if it's in amongst the pack and you've got other people ahead of you doing that same thing, it's then very, very difficult for you further back to do the same, because that lane has obviously got dirty air as well.
Seen a little bit of the onboard with Chris Barrett. He has one of the onboard cameras today to ride along and see his facial expressions today. He's amongst those watching this battle just up the road a little bit. Boy, we're nearly scraping the walls, in fact, trying to shuffle it out. That's Wolf. Dallas Pataska settling things out. Pataska trying the high side to get it working. Yes, he does.
Yeah, you're talking about drivers who are wanting to make moves. He's not got it secure yet, so he's got to make the move on the back stretch here, and he manages that. Back into line goes Joshua Wolf. Pataska now up 9 spots in the opening 7 laps, so he has been flying forward from his grid position, and he is now trying to get onto Gabriel Roux, use him as maybe a launching pad to get up to the next 2 groups, Chris Barrett and Dawson Brock, the fight for 7th and 8th.
And the important thing to consider amongst all that, too, is with the amount of fighting, the more time you can potentially lose if you go in that side-by-side effect, Christian, because of that impact in terms of some of the side, but also in terms of the slow-ups. Getting those groupings going to be majorly critical, not just when it comes to battling, but also how you are positioned by the end of the race. Already, 3 packs have now formed. 1st through 6th, 7th, and 8th are just about at the tail end of that pack. If anything, 9th on back is the next pack.
Yeah, exactly, and that's another big thing as well, where obviously you don't want to slow each other down so much that you fall off the lead. I mean, for example, Sean Campbell, he has advanced up to 19th spot, but he's already 9.6 seconds off the lead. But if you're absolutely desperate to make a pass, you can put people 2 wide, maybe even 3 wide, and yes, it will slow you down as a grouping, but it will actually pull them away from the cars ahead of them, which might open another lane for you to attempt to pass. I mean, we saw with Pataska went to the outside, and the reason he was able to do that is because he had a significant gap to the cars ahead of him, and he was able to have a clean line that he could run and, you know, carry enough momentum to complete the pass. When you're all stacked up, you just can't do that. So to some extent, you have to make a tactical decision to try and break up the packs just so it's easier for you to make passes.
It's a critical discussion point. Something happening 13th on back. Calls over the radio with Alberto Gomez. He's letting cars go. Ross Banfield in particular, he just let go. Had that call down the front stretch. They had also just lost the draft that lap to David H. Baker, Jake.
Yeah, that was the call from Alberto Gomez saying no rush. There's no rush to make that move for Ross Banfield. I'm not going to fight you for this early on. We're on lap 9, entering lap 10 of this race right now, which means that I don't have to worry too much about the way this race is going to go. This is going to be me settling down, getting into a rhythm, getting into strategy, and trying to work out where is the right position for me to go, to attack, and when to effectively put the right battle in. You see that little group behind him? They're really starting to get into this one now. They're trying to find those places, and you're going to start seeing here drivers just trying to pick them off one at a time to get through. Just been a move for 4th as Burke has now finally got himself through on Treva Vavrovsky, playing really good rear gunner role. But you can see right now Jan Dirks ultimately in the wrong position. He'll lose out to Sean Campbell, and Kamal Hashemi will be next in terms of the line.
Campbell's got a really quick race car, and it should be a surprise when you consider the team dynamics too, Jake, because RSR Esports, they've been pretty quick to say the least when it comes to the official Indianapolis 500-mile race as well, and have had some cars in the hunt amongst the top half, if not top 5s, in recent years with the respective camp.
And that's always going to be really useful because you look at a strong team that has itself understanding and experience when it comes to this car, that's invaluable. I know teams that have been out there year upon year upon year and have alliances that go along trying to get the right setup to win these sorts of races. He gets to the inside of Kamal Hashemi, he'll think about the move here coming into 3, and that's going to be invaluable. Having that time, and not only just the time here for car 26 of Sean Campbell, but having the people around him who are going to know and understand how to keep him calm in these situations and knowing when is the right time to make these moves. I've been really impressed with how clean it's been so far.
So far, Campbell up 9 positions with that move. Tied for the biggest mover with Dallas Pataska, who is still in 9th, leading the second pack of race cars. Now, the intriguing thing about everything, too, Christian, will be the strategy discussion. We talked a little bit about that before today's action in particular. The fuel runs estimate for some to be as high as 33 laps. However, if you don't have some draft, it could be hard to hit, say, a 30-lap run. It might be much less than that based on your test marks.
Yeah, I mean, I was running solo, and I could only do about 28 laps, so I think that Melneritz is in not a great position right now. Obviously, it's not too much of a factor at the very beginning of the race, but him being at the head of the field, he doesn't have that opportunity to save fuel. Everybody behind him does. And really, Indianapolis has kind of always been a strategy race. I know everybody always wants to see passing and everything, but the key to this race has always been executing green flag pit stops better than other people, you know, stretching the fuel mileage so that you can cut a stop out, have a shorter stop time. It's all about being at the front at the end. It doesn't really matter to be at the front right now. Obviously, it's nice, it's comfortable, but the key to it is advancing position on each green flag stop, and that's going to be key for somebody like Sean Campbell because, yes, he's been cutting his way through the field, but he's 11 seconds back, and you just can't catch that up on track, especially with how many cars he's got to pass. You know, he's still got over half the field to get through. He's going to have to just really execute those green flag pit stops and hope that he jumps ahead of some of the other guys out there. And that's the big thing I've actually seen with himself and Pataska, is just the experience of it. When Campbell was behind a couple of those Apex Tech cars, he was always looking to the outside. The Apex Tech cars were running in line. It was slowing them down. It was meaning that Campbell could get that run, and he just kind of just shut them out by taking the outside line. And you see it again here. He's just running the outside. He's not in a position to make a pass at the moment, but it's just a little bit more comfortable. It gives him a little bit of an advantage. He's able to close those gaps a bit better than, say, the guys who are all just running in line.
You're looking at Campbell in particular, trying to run that higher line too. You talked about. And the interesting thing when it comes to that is, as he nearly clocked the wall with how high he was going off turn 2, some drivers indicated in some of the fixed Indianapolis 500s in recent years, that was the better way to make a pass, is use the third line. But that's always a balancing act too with how tight the exit can be when you run up that high. Perfect example, remember the situation with Hildebrand coming out of turn 4 to end that year's Indianapolis 500? You don't want that to happen on lap 17.
I
Yeah,
certainly
absolutely.
agree. Go ahead, Christian.
Sorry, I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. And that's where there's a little bit of mirror driving that can happen from the cars ahead of you, especially towards the end of the race. You know, if you've got, say, 2 or 3 cars behind who are kind of battling you for the race win, you can play them off against each other. You can give draft to, say, the inside at one point of the straightaway and the outside to the other. And that's kind of
slow.
a little bit of a pack racing. Yeah, and it looks like he's pitting right now.
Something happening right now up at the front of the pack. That's Travis Henderson. He's hit the wall, it looks like. Mandatory damage repair for the 24. And it's turn 1 short shoot once again, Jake. That's the cause.
It's a carbon copy of what happened to Gabriel Roos. He goes through turn 1, everything looks nice, but the car just understeers up. He just can't get it sorted. That's the problem for him. He then takes the damage, has to come in, use the fast repair under green, and crucially for the group there, as he's missed his box by a country mile, trying to get himself lined up properly in with the pit crews. He's finally there now. The key is, it really breaks up the front 3 who thought they were clear. The good news is it's built up a gap to Shane Burke, who's really having to work now to get close. The gap 1.2 seconds to Cordell Cologne, but he's A, lost a lap, and B, the stranglehold is even weaker for TFR Grizzly & Co. up at the top.
Cordell Cologne still in second. Washweski, the next car behind Burke, is about more than a second behind him as well. And so, already, 2 of the contenders towards the front of the pack have already had to use a fast repair. And remember, with how this race can be, attrition could come at any single time. You see how big some of the traffic is now factoring into among some of these corners as well. Travis Henderson has cycled in front of Joshua Wolf, a teammate, right behind Gabriel Roos on the racetrack.
He's certainly done very well with that work so far. He's been trying to get himself through. Gabriel Roos, of course, we saw very early on run into his troubles. He's a lap down. So these two will work together and try and bring themselves back through the field. And they're going to have to work hard to make sure that they get that lap back. It's not going to be as easy as some other oval-style races. That much we can say for sure. But what you can also say is that drivers who have been expected to be making moves have been making moves. Pataska's been moving forward. Campbell's been moving forward. The one driver who hasn't been doing so much in this race, Jamie Conway, he's only up 5.
That's an important thing to consider, especially with the championship complexion. And keep in mind, this team has been very quick when it comes to the Apex Tech cars in particular. Compared to some of the others, their focus was more some of the road courses, compared to, say, the Grizzly TFR camp you see on screen, with their focus being on the oval side of the platform. Here's a look at one of them right now. Yes, indeed.
Crucially enough, though, this is in the infield, so it won't bring out a caution. Caution's automatic to the iRacing system, and again, grabs the wall out of one, goes straight down to the inside. No big dramatic accident like Scott Dixon did in, I believe, 2017, but ultimately, a crash into the infield, no reason to throw a caution.
Roos may have become the first DNF of the day. Likely is, in fact, with that significant chassis damage, a hit through the short chute in 1 and 2, and his day down to 26 cars running. Let's take a look at the GSRC replay machine. Same thing again, even harder, Christian, this time.
Yeah, that time obviously ripped the right sides off when he hit the outside wall, and then came and took the left sides off on the inside one. And you know, it seems to be the 1 and 2 end of the track that's difficult here, and I'm never sure why. I kind of always put it down to wind direction and whatnot, but it just always seems to be 1 and 2. The outside wall in 1, it claims so many drivers. It's just so easy to get that wrong, and that's definitely going to be the end of his day. And you know, we talked a little bit about how hard it is to get a lap back, but the big difference here compared to what we're used to on oval races is that there is no lucky dog in the Indy 500. So you have to race the lap back. So it's going to be a total uphill battle for Travis Henderson. Obviously, Gabriel Roos is out of the race now. So, but Henderson, 1 lap down, that he's got to race back. That's going to be so tough to actually get back.
Extremely difficult unless there's the timely caution. Right now, he is off the cycle by about 20 or so laps. Our driver currently having some rough times is Marcus Hagman. We haven't seen too much of Hagman this season. That car's been struggling from the get-go. 22 seconds back of the leader, and again has had to go to the short chute because another car hit the wall in 1 and 2. The 0-12 in this instance, and another mandatory damage repair. This time, it's Hagman.
Yeah, and that's another car that's going to fall by the wayside, and the more cars that get themselves caught up in this sort of scenario, the more they're going to be putting themselves in the lap traffic position, which is where they don't want to be. But the good news for Hagman is I'd say that's pretty much just short of window. If it stays green the entire way, 200 laps, you try and get 30 laps on your stint and leave 1 20-lap stint over towards the end. You go lap 24, lap 25 for a stop, you're still within that window and you still have some leeway of about 4 or 5 laps. Come the end, he's still on strategy.
Lots to consider because that window for pit stops is quickly approaching. We're starting lap 25 and already approaching the start of lap 26. Plenty of drivers have had the opportunity to save a little bit in the heart of the draft. Others not so much, as we've talked about. Monerwich, his goal seems to have been keep everybody away from him, even his teammates. He's gained half a second or so the past few laps. In fact, he's a 10th.5 quicker compared to Cologne on average the past 5, Christian.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's under any threat from Cologne, but the driver who does look strongest, I think, in the top 5, I would say, is Shane Burke. He's closed that gap to Cologne, so he might be about to look at taking over that second spot. But I'm really interested to see how long Melneritz actually makes this run last, because he's been leading the whole time. I just don't think he's going to get anywhere near that 30-lap mark.
Yeah, that's going to be a very tough situation, possibly, in terms of those marks. Especially those who try and plan things out, the 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180 mark. Potentially compared to those who may be able to push harder towards the end compared to the save strategies. See if anyone peels off in the next couple laps or so. Keep in mind, the biggest mover still, Campbell 12. He's up 14 positions. Pataska inside the top 8 in terms of how things are faring out to try and join the history books with this event. And it's a history where Kurt Crumb's broken through in the past in 2018. Christian Chowder won here in 2019. Valverde won in 2020. Tim Matzke, one of the bigger drivers, have done well here as well. Contact with Barrett, getting a hit from Dallas Pataska on the right rear tire.
It's getting a bit close, going around the outside of 3. Trying to get this sorted. That was a pinch up to the wall in a case of a very, very late spotter call. I don't think it was necessarily contact there for Chris Barrett. I think that was just reactionary to car outside. So he'll lose the place, but that's okay. Pataska's motoring right now is probably burning a lot more fuel than Chris Barrett is, and so that patience going to be there. One thing I've been really impressed with is Melnarovic's pace, because his pace over the course of this stint so far has only deviated by 2/10 in the run. His quickest lap is a 41.1, and he's currently doing 41.2s to 41.3s. That is really impressive in terms of tire life.
Extremely impressive. In fact, the fall-off number, a 10th, if that, for the 69 so far from the get-go. The key word is it's early in terms of how early it is in the day. It's 12:30 in sim time currently on May 29, 2022, the traditional time of the weekend for the month of May for Indianapolis for its 500-mile race in the real world. Monerwich coming up to the end of lap 29. We'll see if this signals the start of the pit window with how he's been powering ahead. Will he take the peak? Yes, he does. Here comes Monerwich for the first pit stop of the day.
It's so important now that you just get a good stop. He will go all the way down to the end of the boxes and get himself slowed down. And Christian, you know, you've got understanding of this. How difficult is it to slow these machines down, not just to hit the commitment cone line, but also to hit your box and hit your marks?
It's surprisingly difficult. It's probably more difficult than you think, and it just seems like the margin's very, very fine. You go from, oh, I've undershot it, to, oh, I've gone 8 miles past the box very, very easily. So I always kind of go cautiously with it, and you know, the pit exit itself is always difficult. There's a bump right at the cone, so if you're too aggressive with the throttle there, you can actually just loop the car around. It's one of the more difficult pit exits and entries, I would say. The entry is deceptively difficult just because of how you've got to kind of pull the car down, and you know, the pit cone is further along than we're used to seeing with, say, the NASCAR variant. You see it's halfway down. It's inside the actual wall area, so to speak. But that's a lot of time to be gained if you get it right. But if you get it wrong, it's just a huge penalty, so you've really got to manage the risk.
Dallas Pataska amongst those coming in this time. Tom Dowling is also coming with Elvis Pinello. Ryan Walker amongst those in. Rouge, by the way, has completed his mandatory repairs 9 laps down after getting the full chassis fixed on the 323. Here's a look at the cone. Cologne and Burke come on in, and look at how aggressive some of the methods to enter are compared to others. Some are backing up to the edge of the wall and going 60. Others right up to that cone. And that's the scary thing. But it's also the very big time gainer thing. You take it too conservative, Jake, you lose 3 seconds on entry alone.
But on top of that, you know that you can jam the brakes as hard as possible because you know that you are not using those tyres again on that next run. They'll get a set of 4 and go again. And look at that. It's worked for Shane Burke. He's got the jump on Cordell Cologne. Exactly what he was hoping for. There's a car spun actually on the infield. It's Ryan Walker. It was not going to throw a caution, but Ryan Walker's had a big issue and his race over.
Satellite Racing having a disastrous day. Another one of their drivers having problems. That leaves Pataska as their main driver flying the flag. Amongst those having to get themselves forward, as well as Washilewski, who leads the way into the pit lane this time as well. He's made his way to the stalls. Black flag for Kursanov, who has hit the pit wall to the inside as well with the 35's race coming up in smoke.
We said it was deceptively difficult to get into the pit box, and you can see this is how it is. I mean, he slid all the way straight to the wall, and now he's having to kind of do a little bit of a shuffle to get them to service the car. But yeah, it's obviously you don't need the tires when you're coming into the pit lane, but you've got to watch out for that, where if you do lock it up, it's just going to slide in kind of an unpredictable direction. So you do have to be careful with it, and you have to be really, really conscious of what the brake bias is. I'll always run it much more forwards than it needs to be, just to make sure that if it does lock up, it's going to kind of go straight and it's not going to whip around.
Few different looks to take a look at after the end of the first pit window. With Manowrich, Burke, Cologne, Wachulewski now the top 4. Let's take a look first things first, Jake, at what happened to Ryan Walker, because with the GSRC replay machine, you had the viewpoint. He's no longer got part of his front wing.
And this is what happens. He's trying to come out of the pit, goes through the chute 1 and 2, overshoots it through 2, gets in the grass, and ultimately you're a passenger from that point onwards when you jump up onto the 9-degree banking. So fortunate that a safety car, a caution, doesn't come out. If he just rolls up onto the circuit by about a good half a meter, then he'll be there. And then here's the issue that goes through. That's how far he missed it. He was hitting the brakes normally. There was one Mr. Kirshunov getting him through on, but it just looked like he lifted off, lax concentration for just the half second, and suddenly he is breezing through by 500 meters.
And then you see he locks it up again to get in the box, and instead of going where he thinks, it goes a 4-wheel slide to the left into the wall, and it takes him a good 15 or so seconds nearly to be able to start serving the 40-second stop and hold for speeding on the pit entry. That's how important it is to execute here in the pit lane. As a result, 24 drivers to win the lead lap. 2 of the last of those 35 seconds back. Plenty of drivers going from packs of up to 8 or 9 down to 3, if not 5 for the most in a majority of these groups. Group 1, led by Manarowicz, who has a 2-second advantage over Burke. Then Pataska has a grouping as well with Brock and Barrett.
It's some close battling at the moment. through those packs. Pataska jumping up even more in the stop, getting an undercut through. There's a bit of side-by-side then in towards 1, which is going to be one of the key places to get it done. That's Kamal Hashemi making the move then on Joshua Wolf. Remember, he started 8th today. He's already back into 16th, struggling in the dirty air, which will bring Alberto Gomez and Jan Dirks back into their scraps here. And here will come Alberto Gomez looking to make the move. Will move to the inside in the back of shot. And does he get the move sorted? Absolutely not yet, because 4 is still approaching here. And on the outside line, it certainly works. He ducks down a little bit deep, has to move back up, and suddenly you go from offense to defense in the blink of an eye.
Gomez has been sliding back from the jump. Lots of give and take from that car, give him credit. Amongst the newcomers for today's race, in fact, in the number 14. Also brought Armando Galina as a teammate with them, who is the next car in that line. Compare that to Apex Tech, and we mentioned that team specialties. It's worth noting that team also added a few drivers as of late compared to the start of the season. And Christian, I want to ask you about this because they really stepped up some of the drivers in their stable, because we talked about the speed of drivers like Conway and Barrett, but they recently have added Jan Turnjak, but also Alexander Ritson and Matthias Burke, a part of their stable for the pro side.
Yeah, and then, you know, we've kind of talked about them all season and how they've kind of stepped into the league and they've been very, very strong. And, you know, they've acted just very professionally throughout the whole kind of season. And, you know, even when it's gone badly for them, they've kind of just kept that sort of ethos going. And I think we've got quite a few teams out there called Apex now, but we're adding another one that's, you know, looking pretty strong. And I think this is, on balance, probably one of their weakest showings we've seen in the major series, but you think when you go to a road course, they're pretty much now the team to beat.
Especially when you have people like Ritson and Burke amongst that stable, Jake.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Alexander Lauritsen, I think, is a driver who is really, really good. He's someone that I've seen throughout the years grow from strength to strength. I saw him jump in the 2017-2018s, looking to get through an open wheel, made that switch over to GT, looked really, really good there, and has moved on and gone from strength to strength. I think that he's the sort of driver who really helps build a culture and a foundation of a team, and is going to be someone to look at going forward. Speaking of looking at going forward, Cologne has not been, I would say, hesitant to let go of Shane Burke here in second position. This battle second, third and fourth, because you've got Ryan Wasilewski on the back as well, having a little search. This is going to be an interesting battle moving forward. You can see 222 miles an hour moving through 225 before tipping it in towards turn number 3 and looking for as much of a run as possible here to just stay within range of car 25.
Keep an eye on this once more. Curling the wind blowing towards turn 3 at about 13 miles per hour for reference. It's also had some gusts towards the back straightaway. Find some of the crosswinds for the corners. See some of that being handled right now. Burke a little bit higher on this exit through the short chute. Cologne still trying to aim it up to fall on behind though. They're losing 0.2 a lap though right now to Melnirwich on the circuit, Christian, which continues to emphasize how quick that 69 is in the clean space.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised he's been able to pull away the way that he has. You know, I thought that Burke, after the pit stop, you know, cycling in the second, was going to be able to give him a bit of a run for it and maybe even close that gap down, but it's just not really happened. He's having to fight off Colon, and it's kind of stacking everybody up behind. You know, you see Wasilewski in the background, Vivrovsky's there too. Dawson Brock's a little bit further back, but, you know, it's creating another pack for us in this second spot, and it's allowing Melnirwich to have quite a nice, and I'm not going to say easy race, but a comfortable race so far.
Worth noting that the pack second through fifth is currently running up to 0.3 of a second slower than Brock, Barrett, and Pataska's pack on the racetrack. So a few drivers are about to join that pack, become the back part of said pack, to try and find a way to carry said backpack up towards the front of the pack. Words are fun. These drivers continue to sort themselves out for some fun as you follow along with Brock and Barrett going for the swamp draft this time.
Little think there from Dawson Brock, trying to think about blocking, but ultimately left it a little too late as Chris Barrett made the move, and he got an absolutely wonderful slingshot. You can see he's got himself about 7 or 8 car lengths there just on that one move alone. It's going to take a lot of time for Dawson Brock to bring that back. Pataska there just behind as well. And actually, Sean Campbell's just made a move there in the background. That's a pass on Miguel Freitas in the 999 car.
Galenia has hit the wall, the 17 car with significant chassis damage. No caution for now. We stay green. That was the 18th place car who has knocked the safer barrier down out of turn 2. Will this be a caution is the question.
Well, if he can get it to the access road, it should be okay, and it looks like he's been able to do that.
What turn on it is the question. Just barely does. Significant contact, Jake. And this was, again, in the mid part of the pack. Hard hit for someone who was trying to work with Gomez before the hit.
Yeah, that was a case of just following the car in front. Josh Wolf just ran a little bit deep himself, almost glanced the wall, and then he gets caught in that dirty air, and effectively it's just like a laser straight into the wall. He's done so well to keep it up against the fence and keep the car from spinning. If it breaks the plane of 90 degrees, that is more often than not where the caution comes out. So Amanda Galeana doing just enough then to keep this race green. No caution so far today, but a lot of single car incidents so far through 45 laps.
It's a different tone set compared to 2021's running, which finished under caution, or rather 2020's under caution. And of course, 2021 had plenty of attrition in the early goings too. This year, clean and green for the first nearly quarter of the race to really spread things about amongst the pack.
And it's this spread amongst the pack that just settles everyone down. They're in a rhythm. Lots of drivers want to see this sort of racing, want to get themselves into this position, but seldom do you see it. Seldom do you get 2, 3 green flag stints in a row as we take a little look on the rear of the SimTech car there of Shane Burke in second position. Started today in position number 6. And this key is going to be about, okay, what's the right position for my car? Where do I need to be? Who's moving forward? Who's moving back? The quicker drivers have had to work to make their passes so far, and they haven't had the ability of strategy so far in this race, I'd say, Justin, to go and make that happen. With cautions comes strategy and comes placing in and out, and what makes this great race unpredictable.
And here's the tough thing in terms of the predictability you may think about when it comes to traffic, because at some oval circuits, when it comes to the Dallara iRacing, trouble coming out of the corner. One of the lead cars into the fence. Hard hit to the inside. It's Trevor Bobrovsky, who has lost his front wing. More chassis damage. Another victim off turn 2.
Oh, wow.
Thing that we've seen throughout, where they're just getting up into the outside wall, and I'm just so surprised we've not seen it much at all in 3 and 4. It's just all happening in 1 and 2. Just getting caught out by the push, ending up in the fence.
I wouldn't even say it was the push there. I think he was on his own at that point, and he just never got down for the corner.
And Bobrovsky, one of the drivers in the top 5, who had been showing great speed from the get-go, has that push into the safer barrier and takes another driver out of position. Travis Henderson is also having to come in at the same time, and to add insult to injury, a slide into the wall for Bobrovsky, as that will continue to add more to the chassis damage. Things are not looking great for Grizzly TFR for some of their drivers. Here's a look at what happened.
It was such a kind of a tiny hit to the actual outside wall there, but yeah, Jake, you're right. It looked like he just didn't really turn down for the corner there.
Yeah, and this is something that drivers have to remember, is that they'll be going through green flag run after green flag run. They won't have a chance to switch off under the caution because there are so many laps under green, and that does exacerbate the chance of a mistake happening. Now, again, it's another incident that I think is very fortunate not to be a caution. If that was, say, in the Indy 500, that would be a caution, but because the incident happens off of the racing line, it's not a caution. It doesn't break the plane, and as such, we stay green. Now only 21, if not 20 drivers left on the leading lap, means that once more, 6 or 7 drivers have got themselves in trouble, and they'll be hoping for a long result and a long day, and hoping to get back into this one through the results of strategy coming through. Another little battle heading towards 1.
This battle involving Banfield trying to hold on in front of Jamie Conway, who is quietly moving back to the pack. Talked about some of the struggles for Conway during the first run. He's up 11 spots now in this race, with some of the troubles for an entry for a few competitors, but also looking a bit more improved. That time coming out of 2, though, lost a lot of ground with some of the aero wash. Looking pretty sporty with Kamal Hashimi falling on behind with them.
You can see right now, as they charge forward, this battle going on for about 11th and 12th position. This is pretty much the calm before the storm. There's a bit of lap traffic in front, which is going to play a little bit of havoc later on. The likes of Elvis Bonello, for example, is going to be one of those drivers. Galliana's going to be coming up soon as well. So they've got to have to get by that and deal with that in the not too distant future. As you can see, just looking a little bit further forward, that's a big look up high. That's Dallas Pataska trying to get the pass on Chris Barrett once again, going to that high line. This is a fight for 5th position, and Pataska's going to go all the way around and get that move done at the end of 51.
And Pataska's march to the pack continues, and again, this shouldn't be a surprise to see this race pace out of the defending champion for this series. Pataska always quick when it comes to the ovals, Christian. We talk about this a fair bit. Pataska, though, despite that speed, has had some struggles in this series in particular to actually break through to the victory lane mark with consistency and staying out of trouble by the end.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. I struggled with that myself, especially with the oval rounds. Like, you look at them and you think, oh, okay, well, it's an oval, and we know that both myself and Pataska are pretty good at ovals, but they're a lot less kind of, predictable than the road course races. So that I think contributes to why there's maybe been less wins for Pataska than we might expect. But right there, what we saw with that pass with Barrett is exactly what I've been talking about in terms of the experience that himself and Campbell have, where he used the lap car ahead of him as a pick. Barrett was just following him, staying on his line. Pataska went to the outside and kind of just sort of boxed Barrett in, and Barrett had nowhere to go but to just sit in the wash of the lap car, whilst Pataska had the clean air on the top side of the track and was able to make the pass. And that's really been the thing that I think the Apex Tech cars are lacking as a group. That's what I'm not seeing them doing. They're all kind of just sitting in line a lot. They're not, moving to that second lane. They're not kind of taking advantage of kind of what's going to trap a car on the bottom of the track and allow a pass to happen. And that's where both Campbell and Pataska in particular have been really impressive. That's what they're doing differently. That's how they're going forwards. And that's why we're seeing other drivers going, the opposite way and moving back.
And if I may, just for a second as well, I took a look at Sean Campbell. We said he was 11 seconds back after lap 10. I looked at lap 30. He was 9 seconds back. Now he's 7.7 seconds back here around 54, 55. He is, his fastest lap, 4/10 quicker than Melnarovic.
See some of the drivers also towards the lane there. That is Hagman, 30 laps into the stint. They continue to settle on 25 laps in for a majority of the race leaders in terms of their pit marks. So the window is approaching, if not opening, in the next couple laps to try and sort things forward. The intriguing mark amongst all this, too, keep in mind, is Burke and company have started reeling back in the gap to Monerwich. It's worth noting Monerwich, for much of this run, he had a lot of help from the traffic, Jake. Usually you don't expect the traffic to be that helpful, Mark, especially with the aero wash. But Monerwich for much of this run was saving a bit of fuel, pulling some draft off of them. He had up to 3 before. Now he's only got 1 helper in Ryan Walker. Not as much draft compared to before, and the difference is startling. How about a 10.5 quicker a lap now for Burke, Cologne and company?
He's still got 3 seconds, and that's going to be the crucial point because he'll be coming in the next 3 laps or so, looking to go through. Okay, it might be 4, it might be 5, depending on how much of the lap traffic he can save by being behind someone like Ryan Walker. And if he can get an extra lap, that's an extra lap he doesn't have to spend later on in the race. It's an extra lap that he knows that he can save that bit of time on pit lane and keep the buffer that he's got behind. Shane Burke's really riding. He's really trying to get back to him, but Melnarovic here, I think, is playing the patience game. I can afford to lose a second if it gives me a lap.
Especially with how earlier he had to pit up to 2 to nearly 5 compared to some to start off this pit window. coming towards lap 60. Keep an eye on those marks as this run continues on. As well, keep in mind some of the traffic differences because of all the incidents for some. That will be also important to make sure you navigate because there's a few drivers like Travis Henderson on fresher tires in turn. A couple others you have to factor on in. Look at some of the other drivers settle themselves down the front straightaway. In particular, there is a look, in fact, where he had to pass by Dawson Brock just about half a lap ago.
Yeah, and Dawson Brock now back in 8th position, so a good pass then to get on through. It was a case really for Travis Henderson to get himself back through in terms of that. He's trying to get back up to car 169, and if he can get to car number 1, the 69 machine, he can then get that lap back, be back on the lead lap. If a caution comes out, he's back in position. We say there's no lucky dog. It makes life exponentially harder here today to get yourself back forward because it means you have to unlap yourself and prove you have the pace to go out there today and unlap yourself.
Speaking of pace, Burke has picked up so much pace as of the past lap. He's broken the toe of Cologne and Wasilewski behind them Banfield pits. But Burke all of a sudden has picked up 1 second in one lap. What is going on with Milnerowicz? He is dropping off like a stone in 212 miles an hour. Burke is running 220 in the corners.
You've got to think that he's trying to save because the thing is that's if hypothetically it went green all the way to the end of the race, that would be how he would lose the race because his last stop would have to be so much longer and, it would cycle him back. So he kind of had 2 choices. He could run it like as fast as possible, try and build that gap as much as he could, but, it only really got out to about 3.5 seconds at most. Or he could try and save and get onto a similar strategy as these other drivers. And, it's going to make it a bit difficult for him because he might actually have to battle Burke a bit here. His lead's halved. But if he can get back to a similar kind of pit stop time at the end of the race, it might be better for him.
See if Milnerowicz peels off this time. Yes, he does. Burke is following him. Burke matches the move. Burke with a massive send has eaten into the gap from 10-15 car lengths down to just 5. What an entry, Jake.
Absolutely. Shane Burke's been practicing this for about a month now, and he knows that this is the sort of race that he wants to go out and get great results in, and he will try everything in his power to make that happen. Now, there's another little issue there for Milnerowicz because that was Tom Dreiling coming out of the pits. He couldn't necessarily turn, and he's missed his box. Big in terms of this race for Milnerowicz. He'll now surely fall behind Shane Burke, who will leave his marks right now and inherit the net race lead.
It has all gone wrong for Milnerowicz. After being the quickest driver in pre-qualifying, he loses the lead in the pit stop cycle. During the second stops of the race, Burke is off and away and then some by a good corner plus. Shane Burke, net race lead. The rest of the leaders still have to come in for the cycle, though.
Yeah, Milnerowicz is going to lose more than that. Obviously, Burke had everybody kind of in tow behind him.
That's Pataska through him.
Exactly, there you go. You see, he's lost. He's all the way back to the tail end of the top 5 now.
6 seconds lost from that one exchange, and that's not including the run to the cone where he took it a little bit more conservative. An absolutely big flip of the script for this race. Mario Schroeder, by the way, into the pit lane this time by for their pit stop script. Sean Campbell, he's also trying to find a way to make sure that it's not the bees that end up writing the script, it's him who does.
He's pulled back 11 seconds to 3.5. 3 seconds at the line. So he's doing really well here, is Sean Campbell. He's bringing himself through the field, and he has really utilized that green flag running and has got himself into a really good position. Cordell Cologne now with control of this race, but he's got Ryan Wasilewski just behind. Chris Barrett still yet to come in, as well as Dawson Brock. Those are the top 10, are those I definitely keep an eye out on in terms of how they are going to go through, how they're going to challenge, and where will this come out. And a lot of smoke as more drivers diving down in for the pits.
That's Cologne along with Dawson Brock. Some other drivers coming out of the pit lane at that same time, including Ryan Walker. Wasilewski and Barrett yet to pit, as well as Gomez. Every other car in the field has pit. Here is the major thing with that run through the pit cycle, though. With Campbell cycling out, he has jumped Dallas Pataska. He was a good fair bit behind him before that mark. A big change in that said script. with Campbell net second.
That's just huge. That's just absolutely huge. And, you know, it's more psychological than anything else. There's Melnarovic trying to get the move forward then on Pataska as he goes through. And this is going to be interesting in so many ways. And I think the most interesting of them all is going to be number 86 and Ryan Wasilewski. Is there a scenario here, Christian, where he goes and maybe does 33 lap stints all the way forward, looks for a 34-35 at the end, playing with engine mixtures?
I think it's possible he looks to do it. It just depends on if he's actually going to, you know, lose too much time to make it really viable. But obviously running this long is a pretty huge net gain at the end of the race. But it'll all be undone if we see a caution.
Wasilewski in for his scheduled stop. Able to get to the speed limit. No speeding penalties this sequence for any of the drivers this time around. But with this stop, that means Shane Burke cycles to the race lead. Cologne cycles right around Chris Barrett, who has jumped by Sean Campbell in this window as well. Well, check that. Campbell has just jumped by Chris Barrett to say goodbye. But the window has closed for the second pit stop to the race. It's Burke, Cologne, Campbell, Barrett, Melnarovic. Now your top five, depending on where Wasilewski rolls through, as he will be passed by Burke through 1 and 2.
He absolutely will, and it seems like everybody today, including where you are, Justin, is very much wanting to go out and get some quick pace going, and Wasilewski coming out just behind Cordell Cologne. That's a good stop. Puts himself there with Sean Campbell as well. I'd say he's in an ideal position in terms of this race to continue trying to save. Now, if he can get up onto the back, that would be helpful. The other thing that I'd maybe suggest is let Sean Campbell, who's been really lightning quick from 26th up to 4th, move forward, take that place, and you can ride his coattails on forward in this race.
So as we pass by lap 66 and start lap 67, take a quick break. Your top five from Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Speedway, Indiana: Shane Burke, Cordell Cologne, Ryan Wasilewski, Sean Campbell, Chris Barrett. You're watching GSRC for the Major Series and its European Region Pro Split.
iRacing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12 Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iRacing.com.
Today's running of the Major Series European Region Pro Split in the Majors Indy 500 is brought to you by today's charity, supported by the event Cure LGMD21, an organization focused on supporting research to find a cure for limb-girdle muscular dystrophy type 2I. They provided more than $885,000 to research and awareness programs for working hard to establish a way to treat LGMD2I. For more info and to donate, go to curelgmd2i.com. GSRC live from Speedway, Indiana, where Shane Burke is the race leader. Approaching the 1/3 mark of today's action, Justin Prince, Jake Sperry, Christian Schauder with you with our producer, Zach Johnson. Burke looking to hold on to the point, but pressure is building and quickly behind him. Because it's not because of Brian Walker, the lap car, looking for his lap right here. It's Cologne, Washaleski, Barrett, and Campbell all breathing behind him, down his neck, looking to join the fray.
They absolutely have been, and Cordell Cologne, just on that lap, took 0.7 of a second, so it just shows that Cologne able to push, not so much from Shane Burke. He'll be happy to sit behind, save a little bit, bring this race back together again, and this is the sort of race which works a little bit better in a pack, and a driver who's certainly been working well in a pack right now has been Chris Barrett. The first 40 laps or so, it was like watching Clark Kent go about, but Superman's put his cape on, he's gone and got himself dressed, and all of a sudden, he's looking like the most feisty driver out there.
Very feisty indeed. And with all this too, we were discussing this prior to coming back, Jake. Chris Barrett has quietly joined the party, where he was sliding back before the pit window and not doing that zooming thing you just heard. His zooming thing has picked up, though, this run inside the top 4, and now has to try and figure a way to hold on in front with Campbell behind him.
Yeah, that's very clear, and you can see from his look, it's pretty much plain sailing. The face of concentration's all there, but this is still a very close race. For all the green flag running we've got, top 8 are split by 3 seconds. This is by no means a done deal. The top 8 have all come back together again, and they'll be looking to try and out-strategize the car in front, the car in front of them, the car in front of that, to get themselves to the end of this race. It's not often that you see 75 laps of green flag running at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There's normally something to break that up, but it's so nice and so refreshing to see that in the early goings. It definitely helps in the long run that they can go out there, they can be aggressive, and they can just work on, okay, where's the best position to be in the quote-unquote catbird seat?
See that different line being utilized by Campbell. You'll also see the different line being utilized by Dallas Pataska, who has dropped back to 8th in this run. Check that 7th now this time around as he's picked up a position. But so far, as they continue to play things forward, Pataska trying to be a bit more on the patient side, I've noticed. This run compared to the others where he's really been trying to floor towards the outside in very tight windows, Christian, compared to now, where he's more so working in line and staying together.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to 2 things. I think that comes down to, one, he's nearer to the front of the field, so obviously he's in a position where he's comfortable that he's got a chance at winning the race. And the other is we've really seen all the best cars and drivers now cycle to the front of the field. The last one to still kind of come through is Jamie Conway, and he's up in 11th now. He started 23rd, so he has gone forwards. But really, the top 8 are very strong, and you know, it just makes the passing much more difficult, and we're starting to actually see more line divergence there, as you see through 2, and I think that's what Barrett's now doing differently, and that's kind of what I sort of called the Apex Tech cars out for a bit earlier in the race, that they weren't really racing, they were just kind of running in line, but now Barrett's certainly looking more to the outside and actually, you know, made a pass on Sean Campbell, who has really been the biggest and the fastest riser through the field so far. So definitely the Apex Tech cars got pace, and Barrett's now decided that he really wants to race for it.
Absolutely, with how this pace has set it out for a few of the drivers. And let's talk a little bit about something that you hit upon, Jake, in particular, when it comes to the fuel mappings. And Christian, I think, will be something to help explain a lot of this. There are multiple different in-car tools that these drivers have throughout this race. What are some of those tools that these drivers should be utilizing to, say, figure out if I can make this pass, or if I can save this gas? What can they do, Christian?
Well, you got a bunch of tools for changing the balance of the car. You got front and rear anti-roll bars that you can adjust, providing that you've got them connected. You've got the weight jacker, which is really kind of the main driver in balance. But you've got to be careful with that. I see a lot of drivers will really kind of, you know, loosen the car up with weight jacker just to try and kind of mitigate the aero push. But the thing is, it doesn't give you more grip. It just changes the balance of the car, and that's kind of what we see with more inexperienced drivers in the Indy 500, is that they wind on the weight jacker a ton and they get an okay balance, but they're not actually getting more grip. So suddenly the car will then snap away from them as they're, you know, following and trying to make a pass. It's actually better to not go as aggressive with it and just lift out of the gas and try a bit of a different line, as we've seen with cars near the front of the field staggering, to have some clean air and whatnot. And then obviously the other thing is that, yes, you can change the fuel mapping. There's quite a few different maps in there. There's a couple of different shapes as well. The shaping's not really a factor too much on a track like this, except for, you know, on restarts. But you can lean it out a little bit, especially if, say, you're running in a group and you don't want to make a pass. But you've just got to be careful that you don't try and go too aggressive with it and make yourself vulnerable to passes. And, you know, I think Campbell has actually maybe been taking it a little bit too easy the past maybe 4 or 5 laps, because he's lost 2 spots here, and now he looks like he wants them back.
See him all over the back of Dawson Brock, having to back things up a little bit. You see during that sequence too, Travis Henderson taking the scheduled pit stop. And when you have to focus on those marks and make sure you know when it's time to rev those engines up, or rev those gears up, should say, to charge your head shake, that's also the important mark of getting the preparation in. Personal story in this, Mark. Ran an Indianapolis 500-mile race with this car before. Didn't realize this until after. I was using the road course track mappings the entire time. Yeah, you're not supposed to use road course mappings on an oval.
No, I certainly agree with that, and it can be just something very simple. If you haven't understood the car, what it's all about, that you're going to be in trouble. Now, this is the battle for the top 10, David H. Baker and Jamie Conway out there on track, and they're only 6.5 seconds off of the race lead, so they've definitely got a chance still of winning this race from the position they are at the moment. And this is going to be something where they will have to lean in on what is something I think is pretty important in this series, which is the minimum practice time you have to put in for every race to get yourself in. Yes, this will be the sort of race where a lot of drivers that you don't normally see as regulars in this series jump in and have a drive. But at the same time, Justin, this is the sort of place where you're not just going to jump in, no practice, get yourself in on the books and hopefully be incredibly quick. It's not like that. You have to put the hours in to make sure you can get the hours out of it here in this Indianapolis Motor Speedway race.
Indeed, that preparation also critical. And making sure you put in those said laps, as well as prepare for any weather conditions. Here's a look at that battle going on now with Brock and Campbell still. They have broken away, keep in mind, for Pataska and Monerwich. So this is now a 6-car breakaway, settling things out with a bit of traffic amongst this mixture as well, with Travis Henderson being that potential buffer car in amongst all this. And it's good to see Brock back on the racetrack too, because he's someone who has had some experience in the GSRC broadcast booth. We've seen him a few times in the major series over the past couple years. Could see him back in the 83 this season, Jake, for this race.
Yeah, it's nice to see Dawson Brock getting some laps in and actually doing very well. Started 7th, up 2 spots into 5th place. It's been a understated drive so far to put himself into this position. What he's got to be focused on now is, how do I get back into range for the next +1 and the next +1, and the strategy that's working out. Travis Henderson in all of this, I don't think is the worst car in the world to have in this scrap overall. Yes, he's had a couple of issues here and there off of the back of him with a couple of things here and there, but he is still technically in this top 12 train. He is still racing for this victory. Him being in this train, being on the back of these drivers, it's not a bad thing for him to be there if he is in and around your strategy.
Keep in mind, there are some technical issues Travis Henderson is dealing with currently. We'll keep an eye on if that impacts things with the 24 and keeps him on circuit. First car 1 lap down, currently on the racetrack. With the draft as well, Burke has been able to work a little bit with Ryan Walker in the same fashion Malnerowicz was able to do the last run, to where he's nearly the full second ahead with the help a bit of the toe down the straightaway specifically. Specifically, this is where the wind currently is blowing behind the rear wings and helping a little bit in that regard possibly.
Yeah, I'd certainly... Go ahead.
Sorry, Jake. I was just going to say, something that I've been keeping an eye on is the track temperature, and it's still creeping up. We're up now at 46 Celsius, so we started out around about 38, 39 Celsius. And I went and looking at that because the past couple of laps, it looks like the passing has significantly died down, and everybody's struggling a bit more to make moves happen. So I think that's contributing a bit here. We keep seeing Campbell. He keeps looking to try and pass Dawson Brock. And in the background of the shot, you can actually see back to Malnerowicz. And Malnerowicz looked like he was about to snap to the inside of the track coming off of turn 2 a couple of laps ago. He had a pretty big wiggle. And it just got me thinking that's probably playing into why it's now looking more difficult to move forwards, and why we might have seen some cars kind of get a little better and a couple other cars maybe a little bit worse. Obviously, Chris Barrett's the car that's seemingly got much stronger, while ones like Malnerowicz and Pataska, and to a lesser extent Campbell, have just kind of fallen off the optimal pace a tiny bit.
Back pace right now compared to earlier. We started off the race with the fastest laps in the 40.8s, around the 40.9s. The current pace in the 41.5s with a much hotter racetrack in the 115 bracket. In terms of Fahrenheit temperatures, Ross Banfield, by the way, has just had to come in for a pit stop in the 777 machine. He's amongst those on a slightly earlier window compared to a few of the others, a few laps shy of lap 90 for that window. So that window already is quickly approaching. Burke, 3-lap difference compared to Cologne, keep in mind on the fuel marks. Some of the others in that same boat, though. Pataska, he'll likely have to come in the next 2 laps. Everyone else in the same window, around 23 to 25 laps into their stints at the moment, Jake.
I'd give some credit here to Daz Pataska. He's been on the back of cars through the entirety of this stint. He's got Travis Henderson just in front of him, so I wouldn't expect him to have lost too much in terms of this. But a good run out of 4 for Sean Campbell. This might be the time. In does come Pataska from behind, so scrap everything that I just said. But now here will come opportunities knocking. Again, it will not happen into 1 for Sean Campbell, but Dallas Pataska more aggressive right now. If it stays green, he is going to be one of the big losers in the field come the end of this race over the yard of bricks.
Pataska in to start off his pit window for this sequence. The 3rd pit stops of the race coming up. Race lead separation 1 second. Brock now up to a race high P5 right behind Barrett. This choo-choo train gets ready to see if everyone's able to execute for that pit entry. And I think a few of the drivers in particular will be taking notes with what we've seen, Mr. Sperry, to see if they can utilize some of their Sperry points to push that extra little bit further into the entry.
I used to put about 300 points on for an Indy 500 because it's a really, really strong and powerful event. I'd say it's got that much marquee to it. But you're now looking here at drivers who are trying to get on the binders, who are trying to earn merit. And one of the places you can do that here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is the pit stop. If you practice your pit stop, you can save so much time during a race that you would normally not have due to normal pace. I've seen so many different tactics come along all the way up to the pros. I've seen drivers forgo the limiter as they've gone by. A few more drivers in. Thor Tullo's come in. Tom Dreiling is in here. Josh Wolf deciding to jump in. And if you can just get yourself in, master the pit stop, find your marks consistently every time, find the line every time, and really play about with it, you can find yourself a second, 2 seconds on some drivers who haven't necessarily practiced that as much.
For reference question, how much did you have to practice the pit entry when you were in NASCAR competition per round?
Oh, loads. I mean, I would kind of do a full fuel run or a half run or whatever, and at the end of the run, I wouldn't just park the car on the track and reset. I would always do the pit entry, and I felt like it was a big thing that people didn't really practice as much as they should have done, because it was quite often on pit cycles, in a like-for-like situation, I would pick up maybe 1-2 spots, and The one that I always remember the most was actually Daytona, when they went to making you drive the entirety of 1 and 2 on the apron. The first year of that, I came out behind cars that were not taking tires where I was, and my whole logic on taking tires was that everything I would lose with you know the stop time was gained back entirely on the pit exit road, and I passed a couple of cars that were spinning off into the grass. So you know, it's actually a weirdly easy place to gain a big advantage, but it's one of those things that you have to put time into to gain that knowledge, and I think it's something that is always a bit of an afterthought for a lot of drivers, and really it's one of the easiest places to gain time, so you should focus on it a bit more than maybe most do.
See some of the drivers coming in includes Burke, Monerwich, Miguel Freitas also coming in, a little bit of traffic to deal with. Mario Schroeder was coming out at the time. Cologne, remember, has been trying to save a little bit, as well as Wasilewski in regards to some of these trains. Let's see how this plays out with a few of the stops. There goes lap traffic and Walker. Anyone else following on behind for the lead cars? Not quite yet. Looking like a few drivers trying to go a little bit closer to lap 100. Mr. Sperry.
Yeah, they certainly are, because that puts you firmly in the window. If you hit lap 100 on 3 stops, that you're good then for 3 more stops to get yourself home to lap 200. Makes yourself very, very comfortable. So that's what drivers are going to be trying to aim for at this point in time. Try and cut out a stop if they possibly can. But what also they have to be worried about are those cars coming out of the pits, because the thing that a lot of iRacers don't understand is how the pit lane mechanics work with quote-unquote ghosting. It means that when you're in the left-hand side of the lane looking for your box, there is that ghosting effect. When you're out in the lane trying to go through on the outside, on the right-hand side, which is on this circuit, there is no ghosting effect, so you can make contact, you can make damage, and ultimately it is that which drivers often fall foul of, and that's why you're seeing a lot of drivers giving that room when they're coming down the lane, because they know that the only time that they get themselves a free run through, you can see it, perfect example there, is when they're coming into their box.
That's David Baker, by the way, rolling into the stall. 32 laps on that respective stint. Cologne approaching 32 laps this time around. That'll put him at the start of lap 96. With the pit sequence going a bit further, in fact. Cologne doing a solid job on the saving. This whole pack, in fact, Christian doing so, except for Sean Campbell and Jamie Conway, who have to come in this time by. Looking like a few drivers might be trying to go towards the possible cut a full pit stop, if not half a stop out, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge gain if you can do it, so I'm not surprised that we see drivers, you know, I mean, you see here, everybody trying to stay in the draft as much as possible. It's just a huge gain in fuel mileage. If anyone can make it to that 100 point, that is going to be a big advantage, but the trick is, can you maintain that when towards the end of the race you might not be in a pack? And that's what can really mess that strategy up, as we see pitting at the end of 96 here, not able to get out to that 100 point.
So Cologne does get to the start of lap 97 at least. Wasilewski, based on those numbers at the very top of that projector window, coming in 33 laps, likely around lap 99 if he can keep this up. That's right as close as I think you can get at this point, if you're Wasilewski.
Well, I'd say at this point, it doesn't matter if it's 99 or not. If he's riding like this, gets to 99, that's perfect, because what you can do then on that final stint is, yes, he's getting to 99, staying with the leaders. What he can then afford to do is lose that time as behind him Chris Barrett dives into the pits. You can then use those fuel maps, go to fuel mix 2, fuel mix 3, keep going down. You can go all the way down to, I believe, fuel mix 12, I think, is an option in these cars. And if you've got that opportunity to go down the fuel mixtures, and okay, yeah, you're going to be a little bit slower per lap, but ultimately you're saving the stop, that's going to be perfect if you need to do that for maybe 5 to 10 laps at the end of the race.
The answer to that fuel map question, by the way, is 8. 8 is for pace car. First setting is full power. 2 to 5 are the green flag fuel saving maps, and 6 and 7 are those alternate throttle shaping at full power that Christian Schauder referred to a bit. On the bright side, you can't do road course mapping on oval anymore. Wasilewski is in either way.
He certainly is, and the reason why I got confused is because it was the MP430 that had 12 maps of fuel mixture, but Christian, I have to say, getting to 98 laps for Wasilewski, that's pretty good going.
Yeah, definitely. And
This is great going here. Look at who cycled in front of Burke. Barrett cycled in front of Burke for what could be the net race lead, Christian.
Yeah, I think it will be, actually, because he was right with Wasilewski anyway. The thing with the going to 98 is you just have to remember that it's 2 short of 100, it's 4 short of 200, so it's actually quite a big step to get, especially at the end of the race. But you know, if you could just like keep focusing on trying to get 1 extra lap each stint, then it's like Wasilewski's come out ahead, but whether he's going to have enough momentum, I don't think he will. I think Barrett will inherit the race lead here.
Oh, Barrett looking to try and get himself the run. Can Wasilewski park the bus in front? Yes, Wasilewski, with the furthest fuel marks of the race, right before halfway, has cycled to the lead. How long will that be, though? Barrett and Burke working together a bit behind them, or within 2/10. Lap 100 underway, next time by halfway. Here comes Burke for the slingshot to the inside. Barrett up top.
Wow, brilliant work. He'll get the move done. And what's telling, actually, it's overcuts over undercuts. Undercuts are normally when you have that massive tyre difference, you can get yourself going. What's costing these drivers is that they're taking time to get up to speed on their outlaps. That's costing them the time and the stop. And by the time the drivers who come out in front get themselves up to speed, they're already blocking through turn 3. Look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the train at the moment, all up on top of each other. Dallas Pataska at the back of this one. This is a very important phase of the race, and here comes Pataska on the outside. He's going to comfortably get past Cordell Cologne.
Remember when this train was a few cars back? About 6 at the most? It's up to 10. Pataska looks to jump up to 3rd and does. Trying to go as deep as 2nd. Burke able to defend. Wasilewski now trying to run lower line. Burke running higher. Pataska looks to line it up. Barrett struggling in the aero wash. At lap 101, we're just past halfway in this Indianapolis 500-mile race.
I tell you what.
Barrett's trying to save. I think that's why he's going backwards a little bit.
Yeah, and as well as this, keep an eye on Jamie Conway. Where has he come from to become P7?
He was even higher than that before the pit window, keep in mind. Conway, if anything, has lost ground, along with Campbell a little bit. But Campbell, here's the bigger thing amongst that, Jake. Remember when you mentioned he was 11 seconds back, then 3 seconds back in the last window. He's now within 2 seconds this time.
He's flying. He's absolutely flying. And this is the groups coming together. And look how close they got coming off of the wall. Everyone is absolutely pushing to the limit. And this, at the moment in time, it's 14 cars split by 7.4 seconds. That is an average gap of half a second between every single car in the top 14.
The sparks, by the way, were Ryan Walker scraping the wall in front of many of the lead cars. He is the cork in the bottle, you see, trying to get around. He is Campbell in the background. In front of them, the time for the race lead. Dallas Pataska to the point at the Brickyard.
Teammates, and Christian, you know how important a good teammate is to have. That was a case of, you got Wasilewski there, you got Pataska, got a teammate holding it up for Pataska to go out and be aggressive. Here comes Barrett.
Yeah, Barrett to the inside here. I think he's going to struggle to pass both the satellite cars. They're giving him the bottom, but you see Pataska running that low line really close there on the exit of 3 for Barrett. Just had no clean air at all there. But I think what's going on here is Wasilewski wants to save. Pataska knows that his strategy is kind of prohibitive to allowing him to save. So he's going to run on the point. That's going to let Wasilewski save some fuel. And Pataska, you know, gets the advantage of being the race leader for a little bit.
Campbell is there, though. He's ditched Conway. Campbell looking to try and diamond it behind Cologne. Has to check up. A big shot out of a cannon for Conway. 3 wide in the battle for 5th position. Conway clears them both with the slingshot.
You have to get that move done, and you have to get it done effectively. It presented itself only 1 time so far in 104 laps. He gets the move sorted. Jamie Conway now can effectively play rear gunner. And yes, there is trouble. Rear wing off the back, almost.
That's towards the back of the grouping. One of the cars struggling. That's one of the Grizzly TFR machines. Bobrovskian with another issue in this race. The leaders, though, continue to fight. It's been green the whole way around for more than 250 miles. These drivers fighting like it's the final mile. With how it's playing out all of a sudden, Wachowski still at the draft, getting help from Bataska. Burke holds on behind. Barrett, Conway now working together as one in this line.
This is a big moment in this race because you've got two teams up there fighting hard. You've got the satellite cars 1 and 2. You've got the Apex Tech cars in 4th and 5th position, and they're going to be working hard to try and get themselves through. Cologne back there has the benefit of the train, but here comes the look, and it's going to be Jamie Conway getting himself up now into 4th position, trying to angle against Shane Burke, who's got that experience, has been running a lot of Indy style races over the course of the last month or so, and he's probably got himself a lot to work with. But now he's having to defend. It's allowing Pataska and Wasilewski to start to break.
Well, that continues to be the case. Is the major thing with this shuffling. You have some of the satellite racing cars grouped together. Now you have the Apex Tech cars grouped together. Shane Burke, the independent in all of this for this event. Essentially the lone star in its grouping right now. Pending Campbell, who is also running on his own in his grouping currently for this event today. This pack stretches all the way back to 14th, Christian, now. This is the closest it's been from the jump. 3.6 seconds back to Miguel Freitas for this whole drafting group.
Yeah, and I think we've got kind of actually a team pairing going on here because how I mentioned with Pataska and Wasilewski, one driver trying to save fuel, one driver going for it. I think that's what's going on with Conway and Barrett. Barrett's trying to save, and I think Conway's just trying to, you know, get the position and trying to move himself as far forward as he can. So he's doing the same thing as Pataska, but it's just interesting how we've got two kind of different teams with the same strategy of doubled cars each way, and then you've got everybody else kind of mixed in amongst it with Burke and Campbell. Dawson Brock is still holding on to the tail end of this, as is Colon and Melneritz. Melneritz has kind of not really shown much since he lost the control of the race, but he's still hanging on. He's still got a shot at it. He's back in 9th.
And here's the thing. You mentioned 2 pairings. How about 3 pairings? Monerwich and Baker, you can consider that pairing too. Technically, it's a triplet of a pairing, or a 3 pairing, or whatever the term is, Jake. Where you have Cologne, Monerwich, Baker working together as a group as well now in this train. As you see towards the front, Wasilewski, the most he's done, peak a little bit lower out of 4.
Well, the key with that was that 2 laps ago, Malnarovic was trying to make the move on Cologne through 3, couldn't get it done, and he dropped all the time, and that's going to be very tough to try and work with because they've got Ryan Walker, the traffic, who is there trying to keep himself involved in terms of this race. So they've got to get past that and then jump onto this group. This group right now, they are in the thralls of, okay, we can be patient. This is the middle part of the race. This is what you call the get work done, get your strategy done part of the race. They're going to try and get that strategy sorted out. I love what they're doing on the front with Pataska and Wasilewski. It is so clever with the way that they're racing right now, and they know that they've got Burke, who has had some very good running. One thing I'd say about Burke in 3rd position, when he won that race that I was talking about a month ago right at the very start, he was in P2 on lap 98 to get the move done for lap 100 for the 100 victory. He is someone who knows how to make moves late.
Right now, you see how aggressive it's been to try and hold on to that 3rd position to make sure he's in the spot to continue to fight towards the end when it gets late in this mark. Brock, by the way, has broken away from Cologne and the rest of the top 14. So this group has gone from what was nearly 14 cars, or up to 14 lead lap cars, down to just 7, realistically speaking. Travis Henderson at the back of that train is also just pit. You also have Jan Dirks, who's also making some moves in that 2nd pack, but Monerwich getting broken up. You look at the race leader still, Wasilewski, still with a good buffer over Burke. Burke really struggling, Christian, right now with that air wash, nearly clocked the wall out of 2 again.
Yeah, he's kind of been in no man's land between the 2 team groupings here, but that time looked like he tried to get a little bit more than was on offer and slipped back from the satellite cars and into the clutches of the Apex Tech cars. We just have to see if they'll actually be able to take advantage of that mistake. They weren't on the backstretch running into 3 there. It was close, but just not able to get it moved on. The satellite car's checking up a little bit. Apex looking to the inside and thinks better of it.
A little bit more peeking from Conway and Barrett. No moves quite yet. Campbell has dropped back from some of these cars and is using the 3rd line to try and reel back in. They also have Henderson coming out of the pit lane, which could become a bit of a factor traffic-wise if they pick up said draft about a corner up the track. Looking at Campbell in the background, Campbell wants to go here. He wants that bunny back in the box.
He does. He absolutely wants those places, but the issue he's got is he's got a very, very well-coordinated group in front, and this is a very well-coordinated train all the way back through the 13. A bit of side-by-side in the back of it because Jan Dirks is having to defend here. Oh, in fact, attack against Cordell Cologne gets the spot, moves up into P8. Cologne now will be really slow moving forward, and that will open up Melnarovic then to dive through as well. And you're seeing every time you make a move, you break and disrupt the train. You move it back. For example, in 6th position, Campbell had to defend a little bit through 1 against Dawson Brock, running that high line, trying to get that worked on the dynamic track. And every time you try and make a move, you break it up. You have to weigh the risk versus the reward. The risk at the moment is that you battle so much you lose the train entirely.
Oh, here comes Burt to the inside for second. Washaleski washed up the track. Taking advantage as well as Conway. Washaleski back to 4th. Here comes Burke looking to attack for the lead.
Not the end of the world losing those 2 places. Yes, it brings the lock away, but remember where Wasilewski was before he made that pit stop, Justin. He was in 4th position, so he's in exactly where he was, and I could argue if he's going longer than everyone else, he's going to be in a much better position to do exactly the same thing again, work with Dallas Pataska, and continue to work that strategy forward.
So right where he was at the start of the window, but it's 1 second back of Pataska. The bright side in that story, with him pushing so far in his pit window, he has fresher tires by 10 laps compared to his teammate at Pataska, who is the Pied Piper for the main pack currently. 6 cars amongst this group. Wolf, by the way, pitting this time around. Only 25 laps, though, for the 12 car, and one has not been a great day. Thortool, by the way, his race is also done for the second DNF. Moments ago, he hit the wall coming to the short chute in 1 and 2. Mandatory repairs, parked the car. We're down to 25 on track with 85 to go, Christian, and another window opening up soon for about a quarter of these leaders.
Yeah, and I got to think that Wasilewski is probably in the most commanding position.
We have a different call. Melnarovic and Kelowna both came in, Christian. 23, 19 laps respectively their stints. This is an interesting call here.
Yeah, I wonder if this is because they feel like their car is particularly good at the point of the field. Obviously, it was at the beginning of the race, and they're just trying to get out of this line. They're accepting that they're going to have, a little bit longer last stop, maybe even have to take that extra stop, but they just want to run quicker than the pace was allowing them to, because the pace does seem, not all that quick, especially with everybody checking up. I think the reason why everybody's stacked up as much as they are is because that we're not seeing, the outright capability of everybody's car right now. Everybody's just trying to play a bit of a strategy race.
I'll add as well as...
Oh, that was Chris Barrett who has just brought a smoke puff up, Jake. He hit the wall too.
He did, and he is pushing, and he is struggling as well. The one thing I was going to say is you pit early as well. It gives you track position if the safety car does come out, because you will move to the front because you've pitted. Everyone else around you has not. Okay, yes, you'll have tyres that are a couple laps older, but it will give you that help. But Chris Barrett there, just brushing against the wall, gets away with it. In comes your leader, Pataska.
That's to be expected. 29 laps at the head of the field, trying to help this fuel strategy for Wasilewski. Pataska right now is a monster strategy that is starting to take shape. That would be around 80 to go, 50 to go, 20 to go if you try and go around a little further per run to go around the 30 or so per stint from here. Behind them, you see a little bit of a bobble coming from some of the traffic. That's Ryan Walker. Everyone else getting ready for their dive to the lane within the next 10 laps or so for most of this pack. Burke leads this clean air grouping. Then it's Conway, Wasilewski, Barrett, and Sean Campbell, who continues to poke his way around. Here's a car to think about, Jake, in this mix too. Jan Dirks, he's gone from the mid-pack most of the race to 7th. He's trying to make several passes with Hashimi to work with.
Hashimi and Miguel Freitas as well. They've all been working really well to jump themselves back up the group and to get themselves in that leading train. The longer you stay out on this train, the more of a boon it has been in this race, and I don't expect that to change the story at this point onwards. Drivers want to try and get themselves up to pace. Drivers want to try and work this out, and it seems like those who have been a little bit more feather-footed, who have been fuel whisperers in terms of this race, they are really getting a huge benefit of climbing up through the field. Only 4 drivers right now who started inside the top 10 are currently in the top 10.
And that's the major thing. Some of the drivers who started off strong the pre-qualifying throughout the week, it's been the matter of keeping it clean to be at the front towards the end. With 80 to go this time by, Burke looking to hold on with a hard-charging Conway looking for the lead. Major lifting, though. The fuel saving still on, with Conway backing it up at 219 miles per hour.
Oh, trouble.
Entry through 3.
Trouble, it's Walker. He's had contact with Hashimi going through 3, and he's just about trying to hold it. Can he keep it in a straight line? Yes. We stay green. Oh, my goodness. How is that not a caution?
We still stay green somehow. Turn 3 entry. Jake, you've seen it. Hashimi might have arrow washed right into Walker, who is the innocent bystander trying to move out of the way of the leaders.
Well, this is the thing. He needed to make that move to stay with the group in front. It was a must-make pass into 3. He did get all 4 wheels alongside. There's the contact, and up in the wall he goes. But crucially, look at Miguel Freitas. He bails down to the infield and gets away with it. And that could have been an incident there with Ross Banfield. That is just some amazing car control from Ryan Walker.
Meatball flag, though, for Walker. Remember, he had some troubles earlier. Also of note, Malnerowicz has had an issue with the wall as well in the past lap. Mandatory repairs for the 69. Another one of the leaders has just had an issue too. He's in the pit lane as well.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. You know, we obviously saw him be very strong at the beginning of the race, have that misstep on that pit stop. Takes the fast repair, but that's going to take him out of contention for the lead fight.
And he was on the different strategy too as well, Jake, and that's why you see him with the 2-second stop, just takes the fast repair. He's out of contention and then some. Didn't even take the extra fuel there.
Yeah, no reason to. He was running to a number anyway, and there's no point just topping up and giving yourself, what, 2 laps extra on that run? You're already down almost a lap, or actually down a lap at this point in time. So what difference 2 seconds going to make? Might as well just go out there, get some laps, and drive with a red head of steam.
Barrett nearly knocks the wall down yet again. Chris Barrett is flirting with disaster.
Actually, I want to say this right now, Justin. Speaking about disaster, it is Wasilewski in 3rd. He's losing ground to Jamie Conway because he's trying to save behind Elvis Bonello, the lap traffic, who does now get out of the way. Look at how much it's cost the 86.
How about a second plus? In fact, check that, 1.1 seconds. Wasilewski has lost the toe of Burke and Conway, who are now dictating the pace. Chris Barrett, for his account, still says thank you. He's also lost the draft nearly to Wasilewski, trying to get around him.
And traffic's the big thing, Christian. You understand it better than most. It's a case of you can look left, right, up, down. If you're stuck behind traffic on conditions which they are today, where it's tough to get around drivers, you're going to be in a world of hurt trying to get by certain people left and right who are in this race.
Yeah, and it's always frustrating for kind of everybody involved, because especially at a race like this where there's no lucky dog, there is really no incentive at all for a car that's about to be lapped, as we see Jan Dirks come down on a pit road. There's no incentive at all for a car that's being lapped to not fight for the position. In fact, if anything, you have to. So that's what makes it so difficult at a race like this. And the other thing I noticed the past couple laps, whilst all that was going on, is we're starting to see weaving on the straightaways. We're starting to see people trying to break the draft, and it has strung the pack out a little bit, and I think that's just going to get more aggressive as we get towards the end of the race.
They call it the snake for a reason. Lots of drivers try and break that toe by snaking back and forth, back and forth. And now Burke will go into the pit lane. No fall from Conley, Wasilewski, and Barrett. They keep on going. Doesn't appear anyone else. In fact, no one does follow Burke into this lane this time. 33 laps to the dot, 74 to go.
That was a big lap from Ryan Wasilewski in third. He brought the gap to 7/10, and they're going to come out right in the middle of cars who have come out of the lane. Freitas and Dirks and Hashimi, they are all going to be there. Ryan Walker's going to dive out of the way. I think he'll have to come back down into the pits, get his repairs sorted. But ultimately, it's more cars right now for Wasilewski to grab a draft off of, and it is a big coordinated train in front he can work with. That is huge.
Still pushing ahead, Conway and company. You see some of the drivers with the different maneuvering. Wasilewski still in the draft with Dirks, Hashimi, and then Conway. Some of the Apex Tech cars lined up astern. Miguel Freitas is also in this mix as well. That is his buffer car to Chris Barrett, who he jumped massively in that cycle by upwards of 10 car lengths.
I tell you what as well, keep an eye on this. The cars that have dived in and made a stop, Burke right now in terms of where he is in this race is behind the likes of Dallas Pataska and crucially Travis Henderson in this race, fighting side by side with Pataska. That is the lead of the race right now.
And here's the crazy thing, Christian. Travis Henderson, we kind of wrote out of that category of contention with his early mistakes halfway through his stint. He's right now within 7 laps of the same cycle with Pataska, so long as his technical issues stay together, for one. But two, he is still in a spot where, depending on how things fare out, he can still finish in a strong position because his car's been quick on his own.
Yeah, and I'm honestly not really sure how he's been able to achieve that. I really thought his race was essentially done, as we see one of the Apex Tech cars come onto pit road.
Yeah, that's Conway, so that will be Conway stop coming in. But again, Justin, this is just a case of everyone's got a shot.
Don't you love the Brickyard for this reason? And this is why Speedway Indiana is such a prestigious place to be, especially when you're in the vicinity of this racetrack. Wasilewski still going, trying to hit his marks. Again, remember, he's been trying to stretch it the furthest out of anybody. He went lap 99 last time. Right now, when you do that quick math in your head, that's around nearly just past 70 to go if he can do it again. Sean Campbell behind him has just ducked in the pit lane. Dawson Brock, Chris Barrett still going. David H. Baker is also trying to stretch it.
They might as well and try and get themselves as far as they possibly can. 133 would be a very good mark to hit at this point in time. If you can get to 133, I think you've done very well on that stint because you shaved a lap off, and you're seeing here this group and how it's forming up right now. Pataska on the front, then it's Conway, Henderson, Burke. Cologne is on the back of this as well. They've got rid of Jan Dirks and Kamal Hashimi in terms of their stint, so they've done very well. And just coming out of the lane right now, losing a lot of time to this group, is Sean Campbell. So Campbell can't really do too much. Burke to the outside of Travis Henderson. What a move to jump up into net P3.
A good move and a good pass. Burke in the hunt still with Henderson and Cologne in this main grouping. You mentioned the time lost for Campbell. 35 seconds or so in the lane, including the stop in total. Campbell not even close to this respective pack, though. 3 seconds adrift. Wasilewski still keeps on going. He's currently in 3 and 4, along with Chris Barrett and company. Here's Wasilewski. Will he duck in? Yes, he does. Who comes in with them? Chris Barrett on the same lap. Yes, he does. Barrett nearly spins it on the entry. In fact, he has to gas it up to get back up to speed.
But crucially there, Christian, you saw it as well as I did. He didn't get a penalty for that.
Yeah, there's a really good recovery from that, and he was actually right on the fringe of the thing, going completely around on him, and that's the risk of, you know, pushing that entry cone, but especially at this stage of the race, you've just got to do it.
Dawson Brock is on his 34th lap, though. He's stretched the furthest out of anybody having done so the entire day. If he comes in this time, it'd be 35 laps total by the stripe. Brock, for the first time today, is leading laps. He's going 35.
This is mega from Dawson Brock. because if he can go 35 laps, he only needs to do a 34 and a 33 to get himself home and dry. This is wonderful work. A 35-lap stint now is going to make so much more sense later on in this race if it does stay green all the way. Dawson Brock might just be driving himself magically with the fuel margins to get himself into a position to win this 500.
Here's the stunning thing. He's in 5th gear right now. That's how he's been able to save a bit towards the end of the stint. He's not in 6th gear down the straights. As he comes in, he didn't lose any time to Pataska and company. He matched their lap times in a lower gear, and Brock might be in the catbird seat and then some. 67 to go, this time by the stripe. He might be able to go on a one-stopper from the end, Christian.
Yeah, I don't know how he's done that. Obviously, we were focused so much on Wasilewski and his fuel saving, but Dawson Brock has just kind of sat there and saved more than anyone else. And, you know, 34 and a 33 is still not a trivial thing to do, but obviously much, much better than having to do another 35 or even more than that. That's really put him in a commanding position here. We'll just have to see how he filters out. The leader's passing him now, so he will be outside of the lead group. But obviously, if he can cut out a pit stop, it really doesn't matter.
31 seconds would be that buffer time. If he can do it one more time in that fashion to be able to make it on a realistic 33 lap, or if not less, towards the end, he might have a shot. Out of the pit lane, he's joined in front of Hashmi and Durix. 8 cars are in the main train. Brock is 2 seconds back of it, with Pataska, Conway, Burke, Henderson, Wasilewski, the current top 5. Cologne in 6, Barrett and Campbell are at the tail end of the main pack to round out the top 8 on circuit. What an incredible day.
If I were that team of Apex Tech, the one thing I'd be saying to Hashmi and Dirks, under no circumstances, make an overtake on Dawson Brock, because he will need to save that fuel to save that extra stop. He's got to be within half a lap in terms of this race to go and win this one outright. He's pulling away from him right now, so it won't be too much of a concern. But Brock is now using that fuel because he wants to get on the back of Sean Campbell and that race-leading group, which is slowly, once again, forming up together once more.
And with some of the shuffling in front, Brock has actually broken the toe of Hashimi and Durks. He's picked up the draft of Campbell. He is in the driver's seat, and now is that one writing the script at this mark. If this continues to stay green, and he doesn't hit the wall like he nearly just did in the short shoot, it's the patience game. And with some of the drivers about to come in within the next 5 to 10 laps, the pages, I think, at this point continuously will have rewrite after rewrite.
I completely agree. This is the sort of race where you just got to hold on, and everyone's decision will have a chain reaction, a different effect as this goes on. Pataska currently your race leader, Jamie Conway in second, Shane Burke currently in position number 3, but there's so many different strategies. Cordell Cologne just losing a place now into turn 1. That's Chris Barrett making the move, and he has to make that move, does Chris Barrett, because he's losing touch to Wasilewski there in the 5th position. He's got to stay with the top 5 group.
And look at the cloud cover too, Christian. That hot racetrack we were talking about earlier, that was blistering hot, in fact, in some cases. It is dropping that temperature, and quickly. It's dropped 4 degrees Fahrenheit in 1 sentence in the past couple minutes, if anything.
It kind of peaked out around about 48 Celsius and now has been just slowly dropping down, and I do think that's going to help us a little bit with more racing towards the end. But I'm wondering when we start to see kind of the notorious go slow of the drivers who are trying to save fuel, and that kind of always happens towards the end of the penultimate run, where you don't want to lead. So at the moment, we've obviously got Pataska and Conway, who are kind of on those similar strats, and you know, they're not really in a position to save too much fuel, especially Pataska, who's going to pit probably earliest out of anybody here. But drivers like Wasilewski, Barrett, Campbell, and Dawson Brock, obviously, are going to want to try and save fuel above all else. And what we tend to see with that is the whole line just starts slowing down because nobody wants to lead if it means using an extra lap's worth of fuel.
This bottleneck you're talking about may be forming up as soon as you finish the sentence, because Wasilewski nearly washed his way underneath the Burke. Burke holds on to 4 for now. That's how much some of this is picking up. And here's the critical thing of that too, Jake. The cooler it gets, the quicker you go. And guess what happens? The quicker you go, the more fuel you burn.
Absolutely, and they'll be pretty much worrying about what's my pace, what's my fuel mixture, what's my everything going forward. It reminds me of the first time the IR18s had an iRacing Indianapolis 500. Inside the last 30 laps, there was about a 3-lap period where they were driving 3 seconds a lap slower, if not 5 seconds a lap slower, trying to get themselves into position. It nearly gave Kevin Ellis Jr. of Apex Racing Team the victory, and he's someone who could have done very well. This might be a similar scenario. Almost grabbing the wall, actually. Coming out there is Travis Henderson out of 2, and all of a sudden Shane Burke will get a place. Wasilewski's going to jump as well.
Wasilewski wants to go and does. Henderson drops back a few spots. Henderson is due for a pit stop within the next 3 laps, however. So watch if the 24 ducks its way in towards that left, in towards the commitment cone. But the next few laps with 60 to go up on the pylon. This train still 13 cars deep, 5 seconds back the grouping. Jan Durix has been shuffled back to as far as 10th. Dawson Brock has gone backwards in his fuel save efforts as well to 11th position. He, remember, was as high as 8th before he started this descent.
And I'd say here, Justin, he needs to be within 20 seconds right now. He's 3.5 back. Doesn't matter right now. He's in a good position. Cars in front of him. He can save off of them. I like where he is.
Counterpoint, Christian?
Don't have one, if I'm honest. I totally agree. I think his strategy right now is to just save and make that fuel number no matter what. He doesn't need to worry about anything else. There's nothing he can do anyway, so just commit to it and go for it and try and make it work, because if it does, he's going to be in the best position of anybody, and he's not having to fight other cars like we're seeing towards the front of the field.
See some of the shuffling. Barrett holding on in front of Campbell behind them. Cologne just had to play massive defense on Hashimi. That lost him 1 second in 2 corners alone. Hard battling still faring out with several others expected to come in. Henderson did come in last time by, you've seen, off the track. More side by side. Cologne high side. Hashimi pushes up a touch. He tries to get the toe. No toe to really get off, but he is on the lower line with a quicker car in the straight by 3 miles an hour. Dirks looks to fall behind his teammate. The 2 Apex Tech cars look to leapfrog one of the Grizzly TFR machines.
This is something that doesn't get talked about. Aero push does not just affect the car behind, it affects the car in front as well. That was so important on that straight for Jan Dirks to get right behind Kamal Hashimi, because it gave him an extra little bit, a bit of work with the side draft as well, to jump up forward and gain that place.
57 to go this time. The major thing with all that too, it'll take a bit of work to get back up to Campbell and company. Cologne is amongst the drivers having to come in within the next 7 laps. Remember, Wolf and Banfield are in the same window, a couple packs back. The rest of the drivers are currently not even at the halfway point of their fuel stints. Currently, that top 6, 2 seconds the gap with Campbell still the caboose. Here's a look at the peak now to the bottom as Brock passes by Cologne, as Cologne looks to try to find a hole possibly for his pit stop soon.
I'd certainly say so. I think that he'll be looking pretty soon as what's the right time, as in will come Tom Dreiling, who was lap traffic, who did just disrupt the front train a little bit. In now, definitely will come the likes of Cordell Cologne. He's coming in lap 144, so that leaves him roughly about 2 stints of 23, or sorry, no, that's a lie, 28 to get himself home. Those are still 2 full stops. They took their short stop early.
That was that strategy game we talked about where Monarowicz was intending to follow it before his wall scrape. Here's the look back at Burke. 20 laps into their stint this time by. Wasilewski looks to save a little bit as well with that 6-lap difference between them.
That will be a track position gain, even if they can't stretch out to being able to only do it on 1 stint, which is really, I think Dawson Brock is the only person who's even close to that. If Wasilewski was to do it, he's probably going to have to do those laps that are 3 seconds off the pace to, you know, gain enough fuel in the last stint to be able to make it work. I think everybody else, it's mainly just going to be a track position deal on that last stop. Obviously, we've already seen that the TFR cars have kind of committed to making it on 2 stops, but it didn't really work out for them. I think a lot of that had to do with Malnaritz getting into the fence, but Colon is kind of, you know, on the normal strategy, so to speak, and he's kind of going to be the reference for drivers who are kind of taking the shorter stops.
And you mentioned it there, Jake, but Taska is into the lane this time around for the head of the pack. That was to be expected with his major difference on the strategy windows. That gives Conway the lead for the time being.
It certainly does, and that strategy is going to be so crucial because he's going to have to do one more stop to the end, and it's going to be a pretty sizable chunk of stay in the lane. This is getting aggressive, though, at the moment. Oh, and there's a car without the front nose cone, so there's some big damage down there in the middle of the circuit. Not ideal in the circumstances at all there. It looks like one of the TFR cars, it's Josh Wolf.
Joshua Wolf had just come out of the pit lane, and remember the execution on exiting the lane. How about when you go through the gears, Christian, because how difficult is it to make sure you don't wheel spin into the wall?
Well, I talked a little bit about how there's that bump right at the point where you take the pit limiter off, and I haven't seen it exactly, but I'm assuming that that's what's happened to him, and it's very easy to do. It just, you know, it always looks a bit silly, but it's so easy to have that mistake happen.
So a hard lick takes Wolf out of contention with the fast repair necessary. Wasilewski now up to the point with all that trouble. Conway has fallen back to second to save himself a little bit of gas.
Well, he's moving over to that inside. He allows through Shane Burke, who's clearly quicker. Kamal Hashimi, by the way, up to 4th and now coming up to 3rd. He is driving down, has to get out of the way through 1 because he was nearly driven into the grass. He was trying to be so aggressive. All of a sudden, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, the entire Apex Tech team is there.
A lot of shuffling from the line, and now major payment coming in with that shuffle in turn. Hashimi up to the top 3. It's the highest the 37 has been since the opening round of the season. Conway looks to follow along with Barrett, the Apex Tech Cars group. Durix to a race high 6 with it. Here comes Burke with the toe on Wasilewski. He checks out for the fuel. Does anyone else want to make the leapfrog? Yes, they do. Here it goes for Hashimi to the point.
And this is the go slow type thing that I was talking about. You can see there, obviously Burke didn't want to lead. Wasilewski, we know, probably doesn't want to lead. Hashimi, he's got no such considerations. He'll happily take the lead, but he is going to try and break away as we see the snake.
That is a majorly sharp snake trying to go back and forth. Hashimi looking to lead them towards the mark to 51 to go. Wasilewski watches on behind. Conway still in 4th, looking to find a way to get up to his teammate as the snake goes to the inside wall again.
And now 50 laps to go at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And you just start to figure out, what do you want? What can you get out of it? Clearly, Apex Tech wants someone to do some work. They will sacrifice Hashimi as a guinea pig because they've got 4 cars. They don't want all 4 cars fighting towards the end and just sitting there and waiting because someone else is going to go and take that opportunity away. And they have to keep the pace up as well here, Justin, because the cars that have already pitted, they'll gain a huge advantage if they start playing games.
Exactly, especially with the diciness going on in this pack. Lose each other at a time. The tough thing in this equation, Hashimi's got technical problems. He's starting to have a little bit of an issue with his connection towards that stem. You don't want to lose that in the race lead right now.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But right now, in terms of this race, that will be the last thing he'll be thinking of. He'll be thinking of the drivers behind, how they go through and how they travel. We've just had one driver drop, Alexander Kirsanov, from 18th position. His race is over because of something very, very similar. So that's a shame for him in terms of the way his race has gone. But right now, it's a case of drivers are actually worrying, and they will be worrying through this field because the 777 car's trying to make some places. Into the pits comes Jan Dirks then to make the stop. The 777 of Ross Banfield is trying to get his lap back.
And that's going to be the major cork in all of this. He's the first car 1 lap down, in fact, in the 777. He's been in the mid-pack for most of the race and nearly getting a bump from behind from Campbell, who's trying to find a way back around him. Dirks is completing his service now. More others continue to battle. As this continues to get aggressive, that entry expected in the next couple laps for Hashimi, possibly for Burke as well.
Yeah, I don't think Sean Campbell's too happy about having the lapped car of Banfield in between himself and the Apex Tech cars. It's really kind of preventing him from making any moves forwards. Hashimi pits.
Hashimi pits with major technical issues at that exact time. 29 laps is the furthest he goes. 46 to go. Wasilewski to the point. On his 22nd lap of the stint, 6 cars now are grouped together in this train.
6 cars there, and look at this, immediately jumping on the lap traffic there of Alberto Gomez, trying to get a little bit of something. Wasilewski's caught in 2 strategies at the moment. Does he A, save the fuel, or B, burn it and just go? Because he's got these 2 things in mind as these drivers behind are all thinking about, okay, where do I need to be? The longer that you go trying to save fuel, the more track position you'll lose if a caution comes out.
And this is going to be critical. Here's that traffic moving up top. That's Gomez. They're getting around. Conway tries to do the same. Conway, the lift. Not the good spot to reach Gomez. You do not want to reach traffic corner exit. That is why.
Absolutely, and it can just really scuttle the run. And Chris Barrett gets through. Conway needed a bit more work to get there. Now, right now, in terms of that group, Hashimi's on the back of Jan Dirks now. It is Cologne, then Freitas, and then Henderson and Pataska have got away from them. They're trying to use Tom Dreiling to break up forward. So it's crucial right now. 2 have got away, and they are now starting to think about these games. Look at that serpentine on the front stretch. They all go right up to the wall, trying to stay within range of the car in front.
44 to go this time. Wasilewski 6/10 up. That clean air continues to propel him ahead. Burke expected within the next lap or so. Keep an eye on that run to the pit entry once again. Keep in mind as well, if things get crazy, David H. Baker, he is nearly 5 seconds back of the leader. Pataska and Henderson are together within 5 laps of their cycle now. About 33 seconds behind. No peel-offs this time. Instead, they decide to go for the squiggly snake as if it's a pace lap.
Well, they've got everything to play with right now, and Christian, you know, you are in that position. This is where you are counting down. You are trying to hit those laps, and it's really 165, I think, is the magic number. You can just about make it home, and I think these drivers know and understand that.
Yeah, and I got to think that Wasilewski is kind of maybe given up on the fuel save strat, and he's just trying to kind of hold the advantage he had, because he will have a shorter stop, which will be, you know, beneficial for him. But at the same time, Burke obviously doesn't look like he wants to lead. He looks like he wants to try and save fuel as well. But Wasilewski's got nobody to help him save fuel now, and he was already short. So it's just, I got to think with the pace, he might have kind of given up on that. He's just taking the kind of baked-in advantage he had, and he's going to run with that and see what he can do. But whilst this is happening, Dawson Brock's still 4 seconds behind. If he can make it on one stop, he is unquestionably the main favorite to win this race.
For Dawson Brock to do that, though, he needs to go another 10 laps, another 34-35 lap stint to go to the top of the fuel window. And the tough thing is, Campbell's lost ground the past lap to lose him a bit of that touch. You also have Burke coming in this time by, so the lead group, it's now got an even bigger cork in all the fighting because Conway and Barrett have lost their drafting partner to keep everyone else hooked together. So with this strategy game playing, many of the drivers looking like they may need to take the short stop you referred to, Jake, and the timing of that short stop going to be very critical to plan things out amongst these cars if you want to be quick at the end, but also want to make sure you time it up where you jump your competitors. Burke is already off and away for reference.
They call it a splash and dash for a reason, and look, they're not taking the same amount of serpentine now. Wasilewski is gone, 1.3 seconds down the road. He's trying to win this one on time and try and really rush forward. I've never seen an Indy 500 style race get there, and oh, Chris Barrett very nearly hits the wall out of the short chute for the second time in this race, and he is absolutely pushing for everything and a little bit more out of this group. They can't afford to sit back and wait too long. They know this race is pretty much all about what you can do and what you can find. And here's the big thing in all of this. Burt came out behind Kamar Hashimi. He is down about 3-4 seconds on the likes of Pataska and co.
Remember, Pataska and co., they have to come in with the next 15-20 laps regardless, though. So that's the extra cork in that layer where they would have the quicker stop to potentially cycle about. That's a lot of thought to put yourself in with 40 to go, keep in mind. But you're right in terms of the Hashimi part. With Hashimi in front of Burke, that is critical for the later stages. Remember, though, Burke is aggressive on entry, Jake, but it is Burke who is not afraid to launch it on in.
No, absolutely. We've seen him make moves late all throughout his sim racing career. He will try everything in his power to make things happen. And in fact, he's tucked up underneath. He's not going to go and make the move this time here into one, but he will be thinking about it. In comes one of the Apex Tech cars then to come down in to make that stop. And that's going to be big because that's Jamie Conway who has departed from that group.
Major tank slapper for Cologne coming through turn 2. He nearly spun the 53 times in one sequence. No contact to the wall, though. Cologne did lose a lot of ground as a result and lost the touch to Freitas. Here comes Durix. Amonsto's pulling away. Here comes Burke. Amonsto's looking to dive away.
And this is the disadvantage here of trying to save fuel whilst others aren't. Obviously, he'll get a track position gain at the last stop for Burke, but he's got to fight through the drivers who were going full pace when he wasn't. And we'll just have to see how much more of this they kind of have to contend with. Obviously, Pataska is sort of the leader of the regular strategy of not saving.
The window to make it is 6 laps away. So a lot to consider when you get towards that mark. Wasilewski within 2 laps or so on his estimates to make it in. Lots of traffic, though, for a few of the others looking to sort themselves out. Another bit of traffic for these cars to deal with. Campbell is coming in. Wasilewski's in.
Wasilewski in, but this is the thing for Chris Barrett. If he needs to win this one on fuel, he has got to stick in behind these bits of traffic and save it. He will not win this one by being up at the front, and he's already down 5-6 seconds on those cars who are not saving fuel. So that will be what he's keeping in mind right now. Will he have enough fuel to get himself to the end? And crucially as well, if he's coming in and he's a lap or 2 short, one caution will mean he won't necessarily have to come into the pits. He will gain that track position because he'll save it all under pacing.
May have just heard a call from Dawson Brock. We'll see if Dawson Brock has to peel off soon. No, he's staying out on the track this time, but he's already indicated the reason being he's going to be slower for his same strategy tactic the last time. Mario Schroeder didn't get the checkup, though. He didn't get the memo. He stays in the line behind him.
Well, this is the thing. He said you can take the position if you want it, but it's up to Mario Schroeder if he feels like he wants to get himself in front or not. There's no need for him to make that pass or not. He's racing Ross Banfield. He's ahead by a mile on Elvis Bonello. Schroeder doesn't really need to make that move, but it is a case of how long does he want to be bottled up with a car like Dawson Brock doing 42.2s out there, half a second slower than Chris Barrett, who's just dived into the pits on 165.
I think if I was Dawson Brock, I would force him to pass me so I could save more fuel, and that looks like what he's tried to do.
I think he tried to say, come on, go, go, with about a 10-mile-an-hour difference compared to him in the draft for 2 laps. Here's the tough thing. Guess who's next in the line? David H. Baker, who is 36 laps in if he can roll his way to the box this time around. Baker is now in the mix, possibly, if he can make a 35-lap run to the end.
Barrett, Brock, and Baker. Those are the 3 Bs you'll have to look at in this race, and they go through. Great fighting as well up at the front. You've got Pataska fighting with the likes of Henderson and Wasilewski. They're all trying to make something happen. Freitas, Burke and co. And now into the pits. Another car's going to dive.
That is Baker. That's coming to the start. Lap 166. 35 to go, coming to 34 this time around. Check that 1:67 amongst that mark, so it's even better for Baker, should really say. Good for Brock as well in those marks. Wasilewski right now in front of Pataska, then Henderson, Freitas, Burke amongst those who have already come in. Possible we see the swap again, with Pataska much more dangerous on his fuel totals.
We certainly could, and this is massive. And Christian, I think you understand just what makes this race important now. We have gone 167 laps green in terms of this, and this is what all the strategizing is for at the start of the race, in case you do get this.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of the crazy thing. I think everybody always sort of expects, oh, there'll be a caution or whatnot, but you really want to be shooting for a fuel number from the very drop of the green, because it matters, and this is why. What if a caution doesn't come out? This is essentially the last stop it's going to be for Dawson Brock when he does come in, and I think he can totally make this to the end of the race when he does eventually pit. And the only driver who really surprised me was actually Baker. Baker really extended that stint out, and he might be able to take a second spot from this as well.
There is Brock. He can make it towards the end from here with about a 32-31 lap stint. Wasilewski, first on track, potentially as things cycle about. He's got nearly a second advantage over Pataska, but is amongst those who are in the splash and dash camp. The major thing to mention, when the first time we noticed the Brock strategy come into play came to be, it was a 31-second difference between him by the time he came in, and now this could bring out the caution. It's Ganioa up on the outside wall. No other cars around except for one. This may stay green, luckily.
Oh, how is it not? That's a huge hit again up into the wall. Second time Galliana has been involved, but ultimately he's kept himself out of trouble and kept the minimum speed up enough to keep this race green. So he's done just about enough to hold this one together. That could have been everything in this race and then some.
Looking back at the front, Wasilewski as expected cycles to the point. Where did Brock cycle? Massively different. How about 11 seconds back of the leader this time? That is much different compared to 3 or 4 back before the window, Christian.
Yeah, he was aggressively saving towards the end of that stint, but that's okay. If he can definitely make it to the end now, well, he's still in a commanding position. I think the only opportunity for someone like Wasilewski is to, do those 3 seconds off the pace laps, and he doesn't look like he's even interested in doing that. He looks like he's committing to doing the splash, and obviously it'll be much, much longer than the 11.5 seconds back to Dawson Brock. So he's, well, and when I say he, I mean Dawson Brock, he's in a great position here because I don't think anybody's got anything to counter him with.
I think one driver does, and that's Chris Barrett, because he came in with 35 laps to go in this race. If he can do a 35-lap stint, we've seen drivers do 36 being economical. He's sat with a driver like Kamar Hashimi, his teammate. He can say, you do the donkey work, I'll save the fuel, and I'm not racing someone like Sean Campbell behind me.
And if he can't make it to on top of all those layers, David H. Baker, remember, went a lap later than Barrett. He's right now gaining time on Brock's pack as well. So everybody having the strategy games work out, coming to the closing stages, 29 to go. It's anybody's race. Wasilewski has broken the toe of Pataska. However, Henderson, Pataska, along with Miguel Freitas, who is in the top 5 for the first time all day, all have to come in soon. What a recovery from a rough start for Freitas and a slide to the grass at one point. The Team Mad car took inspiration in the 999 to the paint scheme of McLaren and their IndyCar program. The reason you can tell it's unique, the Team Mad logo's on the back end. That car's been flying late.
It certainly has been flying, and Miguel Freitas has done so well to get himself up there, but it's not the end of the world if these drivers have to come in and pit, because they can go, max out their fuel, and go straight like a bullet over towards the end and hope that those cars that are slow are having to go too slow to bring themselves back in. And almost in the back there behind him, Jamie Conway has a huge wiggle out of 2. It brings Jan Dirks in.
The wiggle's absolutely coming into play. Well, will Dirks be able to try and shuffle the back of this grouping? Not quite much. Pataska coming up to lap 27 still. Elects to push it ahead for now. 2 seconds back. 3/10 off mark. the marks for Christian. Henderson is in. What a fallback all of a sudden for Pataska.
Yeah, and I'm a bit surprised at that because he's obviously got to make another stop, so I'm not really sure what he's going for. Maybe he's just trying to get a little bit more fuel mileage, but it doesn't make sense because he's well within the window now, and I don't think he wants to lose time to Wasilewski because Wasilewski will presumably have a much shorter last stop than Pataska, so anything that's going on now is it's a total net loss, and Pataska falling even further back. Burke's past him now.
Maybe he's giving himself a gap, potentially, to give Wasilewski some room. In fact, he comes in now.
Into the lane goes Pataska as well with the sequence. Yes, indeed. Wasilewski is the one who stays out. Conway comes in. Conway is in.
This is going to be a splash and dash for Jamie Conway because he was going to be pretty much in a very nice window. He was one of the middling drivers who came into the pits.
So the service is underway. Let's see how much fuel's put in. Conway, only 5 seconds of gas. A full service for Pataska. Conway jumps Pataska by about 10 car lengths to the lane itself. This could stretch up to 3 seconds by the time they get up to speed. 25 to go this time.
This is mega. This is just mega. And as well, by taking that splash and dash now, he has track position if someone comes in. Another car dives into the pits. That's Jan Dirks this time, who's going to jump in and make that stop. And this is where you're starting to check off who needs to pit one at a time. Do you need to come in? Do you need to come in? Every single time you see that, it is a case of another marker in the box. And Wasilewski here, currently your leader by 3 seconds, knows that he is one of those drivers who has to check the box.
Brock has dropped back 3 seconds this run for reference to the point where he's behind Gomez on the pylon. Wasilewski still keeps going. Keep in mind, he's only on his 13th lap of this stint. Burke elects to go in this time for the splash and go. Freitas comes in with them. Second and third on track that last time by. They're in. Campbell, Hashmi, and Barrett pass them for now.
For now is the key word, and Christian, you know, I am so impressed with what the Apex Tech cars are doing because Hashmi's having to do the work for Chris Barrett, and Barrett here, I think, has just driven himself into the best position. He's 8.5 seconds off of the race lead right now. Yes, that's okay, because the margin he's looking at is about 17 to 20 at this moment. Jan Dirks is one of the first drivers to come in. Conway is 35 seconds off of the race lead, so 27 seconds, you could argue, is what he's looking at.
Yeah, absolutely, and the only other driver who is going to be, you know, going for the no stop from here is Dawson Brock, and he's 6 seconds back. So even if it comes down to literally coasting around the last lap, it will be enough. So I think he is, as you said earlier, just doing a great job. Might have something to, you know, overhaul Dawson Brock, and it all depends on how long Hashimi can stay out and help him save fuel. I think as soon as Hashimi has to pull off for his own pit stop, that's when it's going to become really, really difficult for Barrett.
The difficulty levels really coming into a shining effect. With these closing marks, with 22 to go, coming up to 21 this time. Next time should say around said stripe. Campbell is currently 6 seconds nearly up the road from Hashimi and company. Plenty of traffic being maneuvered in all of this too, and that's the major risk point. Anyone makes a mistake, it becomes a whole new race.
Absolutely, it's worth talking about this because this isn't NASCAR. There is no green-white checker. Anything happens inside of about 4 to 2 laps to go, that's it, the race is over. That's Ross Banfield bursting through Galliander and Hashimi and Barrett and Vavrovsky, who are all there. That is a big, big conglomeration of cars, and Barrett has really got to mastermind his way through it all, not diving into the pits, but now it gets very interesting. A car behind's going to dive in. That's Elvis Pinello, the lap traffic.
So one of the lap cars they've been dealing with out of the way for now. The Air car, Galina, off and out of the way as well after his issue earlier, which required the faster pair to be utilized by the 17 car. 20 to go this time in what has been a green flag to this point run. No cautions in one of the quickest runnings of the major series Indianapolis 500-mile race in its history. 20 to go for Wasilewski coming around this time.
Brock is 2 seconds a lap quicker than Chris Barrett right now. Barrett's saving. Brock, remember, came in 31.32. That's well within the range of I don't have to save much here. And Christian, if you've got that ability to go out and attack, that is just gold dust when you see a car losing a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely, and I was going to mention that because I've noticed that both Hashimi and Barrett have really dropped back on Wasilewski. Obviously, Campbell's 6 seconds behind, but Hashimi is now 14 seconds off Wasilewski, so they're kind of penned into the strategy now because even if they do have to pit, they've lost so much time that they're never going to be able to make it back. And we know that Wasilewski's got actually pretty decent fuel mileage. His stop isn't going to be too long. And one thing I've been thinking about actually is if we do see drivers coming in for very short stops at the end of the race, will they take tires or not? And if they don't, then it's pretty dangerous getting out of the pit box like that.
Gomez is coming to the pit lane amongst the top 7. So now, Burke is the first of those who have pit so far in the circuit, for reference sake. Here is Brock, still that 2 seconds back. Baker, however, is in the tow. There's a lap car between them, but Baker, who is in the same type of strategy, albeit with a little more fuel saving to have to do, is right there with Brock for the chance to make it really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And David H. Baker has been here longer than so many other drivers. He has been so influential in terms of putting himself through. He leads the Legends category out there overall as well, and this would be massive for him if he could pick up a victory here, and not just for himself but for the Legends category in general. And that Legends category as well, Justin, is for drivers over a certain proprietary age, so he is certainly proving that age is just a number in this race.
One of the finest races he's had in the past few years, to say the least, with the performance. Here's a look back again to the Apex machines. And one of the major things to think about as some watch along and take the notes, the tire thoughts. If you go for the splash and no tires on the dash, how will that play out? With the fall-off differences throughout the race, some of the fuel save marks may be masking those lap time differences for reference though.
They certainly could be, and the tyre drop-off we haven't really seen too much of in this race. That's going to be something that I don't think is changing too much. I think it's mainly down to fuel and how much every driver is just trying to save that fuel and save that margin. 42.2 from Chris Barrett, he's increased the pace. 42 flat from Dawson Brock, 41.9 from David H. Baker. Those were each of their last laps going forward. So Baker, the quickest of the three, but they still have to close those gaps. And the longer that Hashimi is out there, the easier it is for Chris Barrett to get the result he needs.
Brock, 2 seconds even now to these two for reference marks. Hashimi does have to pit. Barrett, he's looking to still save 215 miles an hour at the most down the straightaway. Brock is continuing to open up his speed gates. Now it's a second and a half back to these two cars with 15 to coming to 14 laps to go this time around. Wasilewski and Campbell also still continue to go forward. They can't make it. Hashimi has to come in. Barrett's lost his help.
He certainly has, and now this becomes a crucial case of how good is Chris Barrett over the course of 15 laps on his own. He's got that gap behind. It's down to 1.2 seconds, and this might be the pass for the race. Yes, Wasilewski leads. Yes, Campbell's second, but they've got to come in and splash and dash. These two fighting for the race, and as things stand, it's 16 seconds between David H. Baker and Shane Burke, who is currently in the next position of those who have come in and made that final stop. So it will be, at this stage, a case of those three fighting for the race win, and now Dawson Brock's all over him.
Brock with the pressure, looks to get the run. This for what could be for the race win, coming to 13 laps to go. No move. He wants to save. All of them want to save for now instead.
Christian, this might be just the most genius move because they might try and run Barrett out of fuel.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking with Hashimi, that it would become much more difficult for Barrett once Hashimi pulled off, because obviously he's got no help now. He's got to try and save fuel and clean air. And this is where you'll see the go slow. He's trying to make him pass him. And you see Brock to the inside. Probably see Baker having a look as well. And this is the only play that Barrett really has. And they've got to be really careful with this because, yes, they have a big advantage, but it's actually come down quite a lot. It's about half of a normal pit stop. It's about 16 seconds back to Burke. And the other driver that I'm keeping an eye on still is Wasilewski because his pace has been really strong. And depending on how long his last stop is, he might actually come out even closer than that 16-second gap. And he might be able to run these guys down if they're having to save very aggressively at the end.
There's Wasilewski right as you called. This is going to be the critical mark. Campbell had already came in the previous lap. This could be for what will be the fight for the win and how it shapes up. With 12 to go at the stripe. Wasilewski towards the box. Brock is coming out of turn 4 right now for reference sake. Of note, troubles for the 0-1-2 we're hearing. That's Marcus Hagman, who's picked up a meatball flag. In these past few laps, he'll come in as the leaders zip on by. Brock to the lead, Baker and Barrett all in the main pack. Wasilewski still getting up to speed.
Campbell, crucially, came out behind Miguel Freitas, which means Wasilewski should get about 4 seconds on that group. Behind, they were looking, in terms of this race, of being about 12. It's going to be about 8 seconds, the gap. That is manageable within 12 laps. This is going to come right down to the wire.
Never before has a race in the major series for the Indy 500 finished without a caution. Today could be the day history is rewritten. Brock leads with 11 to go at the stripe. Baker 7/10 back. Barrett trying to hold on to the draft still is trying to hope he can stretch it, but Wasilewski looks for the miracle and then some to close up the 8 seconds. He's up to speed to get himself going. He's eaten 2/10 this lap already.
And Challoner, that's Hashimi just in front. They've completely sacrificed Hashimi to get Barrett back home.
Yeah, they have, but it just looks like it's too much. Barrett's going so slowly right now. I mean, yeah, okay, he's only 1.7 seconds behind Dawson Brock, but Wasilewski is only 7.5 back, and it just looks like Barrett's crawling around the track. And it's going to get worse, you know. Everybody always starts off saving a little bit with fuel, and then they save a little bit more as it gets kind of a tighter number and whatnot. And by the end, you're absolutely crawling around the track. So he's stuck on this strategy. I actually think the best thing that could happen for Chris Barrett is a caution that ends the race early.
Possibly. There's also the points implications too with him in the championship hunt. That might be a part of the equation. 9 to go this time. Under 25 miles to go from Indianapolis Motor Speedway on iRacing. Baker still in save mode a bit, staying within 6/10. Brock has that extra 3 laps in fuel nearly on hand. He looks to keep it clean. The gap is still 7.2 seconds between him and Wasilewski.
It's a 41.8 against a 41.5. That was only 0.3 of a second, and Brock's picking up the pace because he might have just hit his magic number. Wasilewski cannot do anything about Dawson Brock right now. It might be a case of Brock versus Baker. Baker did a 36-lap stint, remember, on that last run through to get himself into position. Now he's just got to hope he has the pace to close up, and he has that ability to attack in the final couple of laps.
Will Baker be able to try and pounce himself, though, as the major risk mark in all this too, Christian, with the fact he had that 2 extra laps, plus he had to go earlier than Brock to make this said window to be in this position with 8 laps to go coming to 7.
He did, but he's been at least as good as Dawson Brock at saving fuel to this point of the race, and he's in the draft and Brock isn't. That's going to be the great equalizer between the two of them. I think he has a shot at it, but I think that Dawson Brock is good on fuel, and that's really what it's going to come down to. If Brock has to start saving, then he's vulnerable. If he doesn't, I think he's got it.
By the way, Wasilewski within 3 seconds of Chris Barrett, within 6 seconds of the race leader. Barrett is still trying to go. They've picked up another car to help them in there, which for the time being, Tom Dreiling has gotten a little bit of a whiff of the draft from behind, given to Wasilewski. 7 to go, coming to 6. Brock and Baker in the exit of 2 down the back straightaway. Barrett is through 1 and 2 right now. Wasilewski is exiting 2 right this second.
And that was a 41.2 from Wasilewski that last lap by. It was a 41.9 from Dawson Brock. He's got to continue these laps. He's got a lot of cars to get through, though. That will help. Dreiling, Barrett, Hashemi, and Milnarovic before Baker and Brock. That's the key. 4 cars to traverse, and he'll get the toe off of all of those cars as he gets closer.
Speaking of getting closer, Baker is doing so up the track. Here's the look from the top of Wasilewski as he gets closer towards Barrett's pack. Dreiling is that car in front of him. The tough thing is the aero wash. He needs to gain a second a lap to have a chance at Brock. Dreiling massively tight. Wasilewski loses ground from it.
Oh, that's really going to cost him here, and he'll go to the inside. He'll get one here in terms of that fight, but now he knows he's got to get past Barrett and Hashemi here. This will be for 3rd position, and it's you're not first, you're last is the word on ovals, but you have to say Wasilewski's giving absolutely everything, and he's got to close that gap down. You can see he's lost ground over the course of this lap. He's still got to try and bring that back. I think it depends on if Brock and Baker start playing games.
There's Wasilewski with the slingshot past both the Apex Tech cars. He's up to 3rd position, under 5 laps to go.
Yeah, Barrett had absolutely no way of contending for that. He just had to let him go. But I just think the gap's too big. It's over a second a lap to get to the lead.
Barrett on his 31st lap for reference. Very tight marks. Half a second the gap for the leaders. 4 to go. Next time around is the point of no return. The next flag from that point on would end the race from Indy.
And it just shows you how much of a mental drain this has been. It never goes 200 green. Never in your wildest dreams do you think it does. And now these two who have been playing the mental math, going through the entirety of this race, who have saved the stop, now have themselves a race. 33 and 83 trying to get themselves home, and 33 David H. Baker, that's been the magic number everyone's been trying to hit all day long. These two might just do it, but what do they have in the tank with 3 laps to go at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
5 seconds still the buffer to those who had to make the extra pit stop. These two are the only who have been able to make it on 5 stops for now. Baker looks for any way he can close up to fight for this win. Brock looks to set sail. He's won 1 time in the past in Pro Splits in the Major Series. Can he make it 2 in just 2.5 laps?
You're just looking at that dial. You're just hoping here at 16th Street in Georgetown that this is going to be the number that you call effectively like winning the Powerball lottery. Now you start to wonder here with a couple of popsicle sticks to go. Dawson Brock, remember, pitted in later than David H. Baker. It's easier for him, but he's been in the air and he knows he is 6 corners away from finding that magic. He knows what he's got to do. Hope there is still something left for 4 because Wasilewski is not close enough to catch.
Wasilewski has evened out of that. Only a 10th gain last time. Brock with 1.5 laps to go to be able to kiss the bricks and be able to drink the legendary milk and put himself into immortality for the Major Series. White flag waits up with a stand from Barney. Baker within half a second. Brock within a lap or so away from immortality. 1 lap to go.
Oh, he's trying to shake, he's trying to do something, and now here comes David H. Baker. He's been waiting for that moment, sitting, analysing his prey. The run out of 3 is going to be the most important here. What can he do through 2? He is looking for everything possible. He's just a little bit too far back. He's got to hope that 83 conks out of fuel.
Baker tries to get the draft within 3/10. Final set of corners. Dawson Brock comes through the final corners. He's done the improbable and put himself into immortality. He does the snake and wins the first ever green to checkered run for the Major Series for the Indy 500.
Oh, what an incredible run. What an incredible race. And Dawson Brock and David Baker have made some magic out there going and saving where everyone else could not. That was a huge issue. There's been issues on the final lap because Shane Burke not happy as he came across the line. He feels like his race was ruined somewhere around with about a couple of laps to go. So he thinks that there is a little bit more that he could have got out there. But what an incredible race we've had. Brock and Baker, hats off.
An unbelievable run. Have you ever, Christian? 500 miles, 200 laps, fully green, the quickest running this event in its history. In the past, its average was 3 to 4 hours. It does so in just 2 hours and 23 minutes.
Yeah, and you've got to hand it to the two guys who really made that work. I mean, we really didn't talk about David Baker until pretty much the last two stints of the race. He just executed a brilliant strategy, same as Dawson Brock, and obviously Brock just had a little bit more track position, and that just gave him the edge. But, I mean, really hats off to those two guys, because I don't think anybody ever expects the entire race to go green. They planned for it, they stuck to their numbers, and they made it happen. And you know, a lot of front-running contenders fell way back towards the end of the race there because they just simply didn't expect it to go green.
Celebrations are underway, post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching GSRC for the Major Series in its European Pro Split from Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
This is the world's premier online racing simulation. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat from your home computer with the most realistic online motorsports experience you'll find anywhere. Race virtually in the world's biggest events with officially licensed series, cars, and tracks. From the high banks of Daytona to the blistering speeds of Indianapolis, the dirt of Eldora to the world's most legendary road courses. It's all here, and with more than 180,000 people just like you already driving, you'll always have someone to race. Ready to get behind the wheel? Sign up at iRacing.com to get started. This is your chance to get behind the wheel. The opportunity to race just like the pros. From the grassroots levels, where we all got our start, to the most popular race cars on the planet. From the fairgrounds of Nashville to the high banks of Daytona, to tracks that will never be forgotten. Realistic driving, intense competition, all from the comfort of your own home. This is the ultimate motorsports simulation. This is iRacing.
Welcome back to the place where legends are made and immortality is enshrined. Dawson Brock has put himself into that circle. He wins at Indianapolis in the Major Series European Pro Split Indy 500-mile race. Dawson Brock by 3/10 over David H. Baker, the only two drivers in the field to go one less pit stop than the rest of the field in the first race in the Major Series in the 500 in this manner to go green to checkered. Washawski rounds out the podium. Shane Burke picks up a 4th spot finish. Miguel Freitas started 9th, dropped towards the 20s at one point, finishes in 5th. Ken Dirks goes from 22nd to 6th. Chris Barrett in 7th after his massive saving. Cordell Colon after some of his drifts in 8th. Travis Henderson had an early issue and still finished in the top 10, while Dallas Pataska, he looked strong early. He finishes 10th instead, Jake.
Sean Campbell had to really work in this one. Started 26th, was up there fighting, but just ran out of steam. It'll be 11th position for him. Alberto Gomez will take 12th position. Last 3 finishers on the leading lap. Mario Schroer, surprised to see Jamie Conway so far down, and then Ross Banfield in the 777, managing to finish on the leading lap in 15th. Kamal Hashimi 1 lap down, sacrificed his race today to help out Barrett, who managed 7th position. 1 lap down for him, along with Elvis Bonello and Treva Vavorski. 2 laps down ended up Tom Dreiling and Davin Melnarovic. Well, he had the early lead of this race, but car that started in P1 can only manage P20, Christian.
Yeah, Marcus Hagman, unfortunately, he comes home 4 laps down after some late race issues. Armando Galina, 10 laps down again with some issues in the race. And then from there on out, his all drivers who didn't make really the last 50 laps of the race. Kirsanov saw very, very fast pace in practice, unfortunately not able to make it happen in the race. Joshua Wolf, Ryan Walker, Gabriel Roos, and Thortula, there was really big scalps that happened near the beginning of the race, and they were just never able to recover of it. Obviously, Roos out in the first 25 laps.
An incredible run to the end, but one driver could join the historical marks for the European Pro Split. In the past, some of the drivers who were in that list: Kurt Krum, Christian Schauder, Yava Verde, Tim Matske. Dawson Brock, you've joined the list. How does it feel to win green flag to checkered on the strategy and on the pace to the end?
Man, I tell you what, that was crazy. I almost dropped to the back of the pack right away because past Indy 500s have been caution ridden, and thank goodness I didn't, because holy cow. I think after that first pit stop, I kind of switched to, all right, I'm kind of in the back of this front pack. Let's just flip it to fuel map 5 and see how much fuel we can save and see if we can stretch. Who knows? Then 3 stops out, I started doing the math and realized, holy cow, I might be able to actually stretch this. And then ended up being a lap to the good. It's unbelievable. I'm still shaking. I started shaking right around 20 to go once I started realizing that I was going to be the only one out there. And it still hasn't really set in yet. Just surreal.
An unbelievable race, to say the least. You mentioned how you strategize things out, and it's worth noting, too, that for you, we've seen you in the past in this series, not so much of you this campaign, and then you come in and you win it.
Yeah, so we took a little bit of a hiatus. I've been busy with life and other things, and then just got done with classes. Finals was last week. I look at the schedule. I see Indy 500. I'm like, you know what? Let's just try it. Let's see what happens. And I come back, no team, nothing. Just came in here to do my thing, and it worked out. I seriously would have never guessed this would have happened.
When will we see you again on the track?
Ooh, I have to come for Le Mans. Unless something comes up, I'll be here for Le Mans. So.
Oh, by the way, what's your choice of milk for victory, Lang Dawson?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Your favorite choice of milk to celebrate this win.
Milk? Oh, man. Well, I hear we're doing shoeies on GSRC again. I've been away, but I have been paying attention to the social medias. Shoeies are still a thing?
Yes, they're definitely still a thing. Do you have a shoey with you?
I may have a very sweaty sneaker sitting here. I don't have milk, though. I cannot believe that I overlooked that. But I do have a shoe. Let's see here.
Okay.
Can we make this work? Is this going to work?
He's trying it. He's trying it. For reference, he's currently trying the webcam side, and it's with I don't know what. Zach Johnson's going to have a lot of work to figure this out.
We can wait.
He is currently working on it to where he's currently pouring a whole can of a beverage into a shoe.
We should say as well, it is a nondescript, unbranded beverage.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Am I good to go? Is the camera on?
It is.
Oh, perfect. Here we go.
There it goes.
Oh. Awesome.
Amazing. Amazing work today, Dawson. Congratulations. You're a winner of the Major Series Indy 500.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Dawson Brock from Victory Lane. And Ryan Washaleski was the first of those who tried the extra pit stop call. Believe he's standing by with Jake. I don't think he will have a shoey, obviously, for the podium, but he will have some good points.
Ryan, it just looked out there today like you were the one first trying to make 5 stops work. It was looking green. It was looking to stay green. At what point did you switch the strategy to be uber aggressive in the second half of that race?
What's the first time I ended up behind Dallas, and I was able to aggressively fuel save because we were taking up 2 lanes and nobody was able to make a move on us. After that pit cycle, that's when I decided to kind of pull the trigger. And hindsight's always 20/20. I probably should have waited 10 more laps, but I was unaware of Dawson and David's strategy. They weren't even on my radar the entire time. So pretty much I thought I had everybody covered pretty easily, and then one of my teammates called 2 are going to make it to the end on this stop, and at that point it was too little too late for me to start saving again to make it to the end. I was short 6 laps, and that's going too slow to cover that off with 20 laps of fuel in the tank.
Well, a case of not having all bases covered. It's still a really impressive race in terms of what the team was able to manage, because it looked like everyone was throwing something at it. It looked like Apex Tech had something for it. TFR cars, who all started on the front, had something for it today. It looked like it was a really tactical, everyone's got a little bit of something to try and throw something forward. How important was it just to look around and try and work out what information you had, especially as the trains brought back together 12, 13, 14 deep at sometimes?
Yeah, so my strategy from the get-go, basically I went to last year's real-life Indy 500. It was the first one I've ever been to, and that one went caution-free. So I started off the race, and I was in 5th. I didn't really want to be on the 3rd row, so I debated, just bringing it to the back. But then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to fuel save right off the bat. I'm not going to try and make any moves. If a caution comes out, then, you just kind of reset and do it again. And then, 40 laps go by, you get your first green flag cycle, and then you get the second one. And then at that point, you're kind of like, all right, everybody's calmed down. Everybody's in the groove. Nobody's going to really make mistakes unless they get tired. And, obviously that didn't happen. So I went in there knowing that I didn't have the fastest trimmed car, so I was going in there purely for fuel saving, and that's kind of how I set myself apart. The first 2 pit cycles, I could easily tell that people were not on the same page as me, and then the second time coming out into that third stint, I could see that everybody kind of caught on to what I was doing. It was trying to, I was running, I tested it, and I was running, 8 fuel save map and going 210 miles an hour on the straight, and there were 6 guys behind me that weren't passing me. So I knew at that point everybody was kind of doing the same thing. So at that point I already saved, I think I was plus 5 laps on most of the guys in the group. So I just went for it, and I was able to pull the trigger early.
It's still 3rd position. It's still a bunch of points, especially crucial in terms of how everyone's trying to put together a season. What are you looking at now in terms of tackling these next stages, moving from May into June, July? What's the goal for you moving forward?
I missed I think this is only the second round I made. I've been a little busy, but it's clearing up for me. So personally, I'm excited for the combos that are coming up. I think they favor myself, and they definitely favor my team and the skill sets that we have on satellite racing. So we are definitely going into the remaining parts of this season with high hopes for what the team can have.
Well, there are certainly some high hopes here, but the floor is yours, Ryan. Who gets it done for you? 3rd place here today from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yeah, I just want to thank satellite racing in general, sponsors Ellis Engineering, More Edness, and I'm drawing blanks on the new guys. That's bad. That's what 200 laps around Indy 500 does to your brain. But yeah, thanks to teammates Dallas, Gabriel, and Ryan Walker. Gabriel and Walker kind of didn't really have a good race, and then Dallas was going to the no fuel save strategy, which actually ended up benefiting me more than it benefited him. So yeah, great work from the team.
Great work from the team indeed. Ryan Wasilewski there joining us. 3rd position overall, drove a really, really good race today, Justin.
A stellar race for him with the strategy in particular. And how about that, Christian? We talked about the excitement. Green flag to checkered. One of the quickest runs in the history of this event for the series. And Dawson Brock joins Immortality Land with his ability, along with Baker's, to stretch the fuel stint to where it was 1 stop less than the rest of the field. An unbelievable call for a driver who was able to just look at the schedule, say, I want to run, and he wins it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about it throughout the whole race about how the strategy was so important. I don't think really anybody was expecting it to go green the whole way. And we kind of got an example of just how extreme the strategy importance can really be in a race such as this. Obviously, we heard there about how Pataska's strategy of running flat out just ended up actually helping the guys who were trying to save fuel more than it helped himself. Same for drivers such as Sean Campbell. Obviously, still good results, 10th and 11th for both Pataska and Campbell. But, you know, the guys who we didn't really talk about too much about Baker at all until the very end of the race. And they just kept to their own strategies. They figured out what they were going to do, and they just executed it perfectly. And you heard there from Wasilewski, he wasn't even looking at what Brock and Baker were doing because he wasn't racing them. They were doing their own thing and just quietly setting themselves up, and all of a sudden on the last stop they pop out to the front of the field. And you know, that's really kind of what the race is all about. It's obviously great on track action, we saw a lot of passing, but it is a strategy race fundamentally.
And if I may just jump in for one moment, the record currently for the fastest Indianapolis 500 in the real world was set in 1990 by Arie Luyendyk in a Lola Chevrolet, and that was 2 hours, 41 minutes, 18 seconds. Cautionless, they were 19 minutes faster than the fastest real world Indy 500.
That's incredible, and just showcases the work done by these competitors here tonight to be able to go all the way to the checkered. There's a lot to talk about and a lot to consider, especially with many of the big hitting different events coming up on the calendar. But first, we'd like to give a shout out to the Majors Series, as it's sponsored by the Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. Get help from any of the garage coaches 24/7 and sign up now for awesome, affordable monthly subscriptions. Promo code is Majors GSRC for 10% off. Find that in the description down below. That applies directly to your special offer in that regard to be able to be as quick as some of the drivers you've seen here today. We'd like to give a shout out to the charity supported by this year's event, Cure LGMD2I. A few months ago, their efforts got a big boost when a pharmaceutical company, Bridge Biopharma, showed strong results in the testing they had in getting medications and treatment through the process of testing for limb-girdle muscular dystrophy type 2I to treat it. To be able to find out more about that effort, to be able to find out how to donate, to be able to be a part of their future events, to find out about their Awareness Day, September the 30th, go to curelgmd2i.com. We'd also like to take the time to thank you for tuning in general, for the Brickyard, for what was a historic running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race for the Major Series, and thank the companies who provided the software and hardware for a broadcast list up on screen. Additional thanks go to Jude Law, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to today's team and Jake, Christian, Zach, and Dougie. You can find out more info about GSRC at globalsimracingchannel.com. Or you can check out our social media listed on screen. Be sure to check out the merchandise store as well at gsrcstoreandvy.com. We keep you a link in the description down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as hit the notification bell so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. The next time the European Pro Split goes racing is for the French countryside 2.4 hours at the historic racetrack. That takes place the weekend of June the 5th. You can watch that here on GSRC. But later on tonight, we at GSRC get to do this again because the pressure is intensified for the Americas. Because not only is the Pro Split on GSRC, there is Bump Day qualifying, where if you are in the bottom half of the field order, 21st or so on back, you have to try and keep yourself in that running order, or else you run in the Sportsman 1. You try and qualify for Sport 1 and once that bottom grouping, you have to try and hope you don't get bumped to Sport 2. That pressure intensifies at about 7:25 p.m. Eastern Time here on GSRC. Be sure to tune in. It's going to be a busy night of action. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on screen. Check those out and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.